One when all of humanity was thrown into the shard tide ocean, Cotun woke up on a piece of coral barely wider than a folded blanket, his shoes already soaked in the water. Out. Of every survivor in this stretch of sea, his is the only island the world did not bother to classify. Cotun was just a Korean dock worker who knew fish, rope, and bad weather, and not much else. Meanwhile, everyone else opened their eyes on massive islands complete with trees, streams, caves, beaches, and huts. The archipelago chat labeled him coral trash before even asking his name. One landed before the rest. An island core is a survival anchor. Lose it and get erased. Cotton's first morning reef report pointed directly at a starter island with fruit, driftwood, shellfish, a freshwater seep, one reef lizard, and a raft blueprint. And he thought it was just helping him survive one more day, but after conquering it, his coral opened like a giant mouth. It turns out he had not received the weakest island. He had obtained the only one capable of devouring the others. The water is cold around his ankles, and for a few seconds he does not move. After all, moving requires knowing what to do, and Cotun has absolutely no idea what is happening yet. Beneath him, the coral is rough, pale, dotted with tiny pink bumps and a single knob shaped like a fist. Crouching low, he lets his hand search the surface for grip. The sea around him is calm, the way water goes calm right before chaos erupts. A thin film of sunlight filters down through what should be sky, but feels more like a high, painted ceiling. Suddenly, a panel flashes right in front of his eyes. A clean, white-edged message pops up. Welcome owner, Cotun, Shard Tide Ocean Migration. Complete 8 billion humans transported, one island core per owner. A voice from the panel reads the text, and on the second read it really sinks in. Island core equals survival anchor. Lose the core and you are erased. His starter kit unpacks itself in a row across the bottom of his vision. One stale ration, a tiny water pouch, flimsy fishing line, raw hook material, and a single island core claim marker. Of course, they gave him the budget kit. He opens the panel to check the rankings. Names roll up under an island-size column. Dragging his eyes down, he finds his row near the dead bottom, where the next cell reads unclassified owner. Smaller letters than everyone else's. Whoever created this ranking system did not even bother to round him up. The world chat scrolls past with images as he reads. One lucky guy with a beach island shares a freshwater stream cutting through palm shadows. Second user posts a cave mouth lit by glowing worms. A third shows a grove of fruit trees with a creek running right through the middle. Then, a fourth uploads a screenshot of the ranking list, circling Cotun's row as coral trash. Talk about toxic chat. He closes the panel because the next post will be even meaner, and he is not in the mood. Now his stomach starts demanding attention. Half of that dry, stale ration goes down with effort. Next, a tiny sip from the pouch. Then he sits cross-legged on the coral, waiting for the system rules that actually matter. Morning reef report. The next prompt offers one daily intel scan. With nothing chosen yet, the report runs randomly on an uninhabited starter island within range. Text rolls in fragments across the top of his vision. An uninhabited starter island lies 200 meters southeast, low danger. It has red fruit, driftwood, and a shellfish bed, a freshwater seep, one level 3 reef lizard, plus a shell raft. Blueprint near a broken crab trap. Best landing point is the inner shore, conquest. He must claim the core before the tide closes his path. The report's last line flags. Stark warning, the tide closes the inner channel in roughly 5 hours. 5 hours is not nothing, but 5 hours with no boat is almost nothing either. His hook is just a crude chip of coral from the starter kit, shaped like a thumbnail. His weak fishing line is a thread you would never trust. Perched on the coral edge, he uses a rough knob to score the chip. He loops the thread through, tying a secure half hitch with 3 very tight wraps. His hands have done this in far worse weather. He lacks a proper rod, so he breaks a finger of driftwood off a piece floating against the reef. He jams the line through a crack, knots it, and drops the rig. A silver minnow bites on the very first drop, but the line is weak. Since the thread is too weak to lift it, he guides the fish sideways along the edge until he can flip it up. It flops, pinned by his knee. Hands first, blade later. With no knife yet, biting the head off is required. His training prepared him for survival, not squeamishness. Within minutes, another minnow bites. He repeats the routine. Then something much heavier strikes. On the third drop, the wood bends double before he feeds some line out. But the creature is hooked securely just under the water. It is a sharp-shell crab. Palm-sized, bright red, and heavily ridged. Its claws are not massive, but big. Enough to draw blood. Dragging it onto the coral, he pins it down and twists. Legs off using a trick a fishmonger taught him years ago, and cracks the body open. Sweet meat. Half of it goes down slowly because he knows the salt will dehydrate him, and he only has one water pouch left. The shell stays. Cracking the back plate off in 2 pieces gives him a smooth, curved shield. He ties one half across the back of his left hand using spare line. A crude handguard, not great but better than nothing, a soft chime indicates. The clay marker is finally ready to be planted, checking the burning sun against his reports. He stops overthinking. He secures the marker to his wrist. With the spare line, then wedges his rod into a deep crevice so the tide does not steal. Slipping into the ocean, he begins to swim. The 200 meters is agonizingly slow. Because he is no swimmer, he is just a guy who fell off enough docks to learn how to float face up, legs moving slowly. Salt in the eyes is a direct threat to his focus. His primary landmark is a dead tree leaning at about 60 degrees, and that is all he watches. Sand meets his feet sooner than expected. He crawls onto the pale sand and lies flat for 15 seconds just to breathe. It is a tiny island with a few trees and a low driftwood pile near the leaning landmark. A shellfish bed lies along the southern curve, and a dark patch beneath it. Rock indicates a freshwater seep. The deadly reef lizard is currently nowhere in sight, though the report marked it as level 3, and unseen monsters are the most dangerous. A sturdy stick sits near the driftwood pile, ready to serve as a makeshift spear. It is dry, dead palmwood about finger-thick at the base. Scraping the tip against a sharp rock until it can pierce soft flesh takes only 2 minutes. He moves cautiously because the report warned him of the beast, but not where it sleeps. The clay marker on his wrist is humming. Planting it in the sand at the center of the shellfish bed, he kicks out. He draws a circle with his heel, and a pale blue ring traces itself along the kicked line. Claim circle active. Resources inside the circle convert to his inventory once the core is claimed. Anything outside the circle does not transfer. He hauls wet driftwood, 3 armfuls of dry wood from the pile, 6 fat shellfish from the bed, and 2 red fruits from the closest tree. He grabs a cracked coconut shell to use as a cup, and a long strip of vine that wraps twice around a stump, and then some. All of it goes inside the circle. As he grabs the final load, a lizard strikes. It comes low and fast off the side of the dead tree he ignored, and the system report of level 3 is too generous. The beast is huge, and it charges like it wants his shins. His spear rises, drops, rises again, and on. A second swift pass, he drives his weapon deep behind the front leg of the beast. It twists, biting his crab shell handguard. It cracks but holds. He drives the spear deeper. 10 seconds. Finally, the beast goes still, and 10 seconds is a long time to have jaws clamped on a hand. A notification rolls up. His vision, reef lizard level 3 defeated. Drops include bone, teeth, hide, and a small island core shard. Sitting beats standing. His driftwood spear is splintered halfway down. He ties the new bone teeth to the cracked head with vine. This crude rebuild is uglier than the original but probably stronger. His crab shell guard is loose, so he ties it tighter. Blood is on his forearm, but it is not deep. Salt water will naturally close the wound before the sundown. A broken crab trap at the south end is half buried, hiding a crude shell raft blueprint inside a small chest underneath. He dusts the chest, and the lid opens to his hand because he is the only active owner on this island. The blueprint slots into his inventory, and a soft ping marks it for use. The tide is starting to move in the inner channel. Reviewing the detailed system report once more in his head, he picks up the unclaimed island core that has sat at the base of the dead tree this whole time, looking like a clouded glass apple. The core is warm, pressing it to his chest the way the prompt tells him to. He is finally asked the only question that actually matters. Coral Devour Core detected. The acquired island core may be processed in 4 ways. Absorb into the Coral Devour Core for growth, link as outer reef territory, or extract the island traits into storage. Finally, he can dissolve it. He chooses the Coral Devour option. Oddly, the welcome script had never mentioned any choice like this, and yet absorb is the option he chooses. That core breaks open against his chest and pours directly into something behind his sternum. Yet, behind his sternum is not where it actually goes. It is simply where he feels it go. The pale blue claim circle in the sand pulses once, and the entire starter island begins unmaking. The massive driftwood pile collapses cleanly into his inventory. Shellfish in the circle slide into his inventory, the fruit, vine, and cracked coconut. All follow, even the bone teeth and lizard hide logs successfully, but the lizard is outside. The circle and its corpse dissolves into pale grit and sinks, the trees outside the circle bend, softening into powder like wet sugar in the water. His footing fails. Because the ground he stands on is dissolving, so he swims, the 200 meters back is faster because the tide moves with him, and when he drags himself onto the coral platform, he lies there for a full minute before looking at what remains of home. It got bigger, though not by much. The tiny blanket-sized stone platform has expanded. It is now the size of a small kitchen floor. Along one edge, a shallow depression has filled with seawater, leaving 3 tiny silver fish swimming in circles. The edge of this new platform has grown a jagged row of outward-facing coral teeth. They form a low, defensive fence. The system readout confirms it, a newly evolved coral ring. He has a flat surface, a shallow fish pool, and protective coral spikes. Just 20 minutes ago, he was sitting on a stone no larger than a cushion. Now, he actually has real floor space. The world chat is his next stop. When he first checks the messages, a wave of jokes about his coral trash is everywhere because someone screenshotted his low ranking. 15 minutes later, he checks again. The mocking crowd has suddenly gone completely silent. The island's size rankings refreshed, and his name shot up by about 30 places. Nobody is calling his place trash anymore. Now, they are begging to know his secret. He ignores them and closes the panel. A crude shell raft blueprint glows in his inventory. He can build it tonight if he cuts back on sleep. First, he checks the sea map and selects his next target. 2 distinct pings show up nearby. One is unowned, labeled Blood Crab Island with medium-low danger. The other island is already owned by someone. Its report icon is grayed out. Scouting owned islands costs extra intel, which he lacks. Blood Crab Island it is, target locked. Tomorrow's scan is set. The sun is setting, casting long, sharp shadows from the coral teeth across the brand new floor. He eats his second piece of fruit, takes a carefully measured sip of water, and lies down on the dry stone with his trusty spear close by. But before sleeping, he opens up his inventory one last time to inspect the bottom row. A brand new entry has appeared there. Coral Devour Core is active, and capacity is growing. No special skills are listed yet. He checks the raft durability stats just to be sure. Then double-checks his core capacity. Finally, he falls asleep, aiming to rise early. He wakes up before dawn. His cheap starter fishing line cannot handle bigger ocean prey. Luckily, those 3 small silver fish are still swimming in circles inside his shallow pool. These little silver fish are going to make excellent bait for bigger prey. Using a crab shell piece as a scoop, he moves them into a cracked coconut. He sets it aside safely, then opens up the crude raft blueprint to inspect the details. It requires 6 pieces of driftwood, 2 strips of crab shell, and some sturdy vines. He also needs 4 lengths of vine and a waterproof layer of seal moss. Fortunately, yesterday's haul already contains the driftwood and plenty of crab shells. The vine is a bit short, but he has the skin of the reef lizard. The greasy lizard hide should easily keep out water, acting as a great barrier. He cuts, stretches, and pins the hide under the wood while lashing the frame together. The frame is a flat rectangle, sized to fit him, braced with 2 sturdy crossbars. His old dockworking days come in handy here. He wraps the rope tightly over and under in a figure-8 pattern. Then, he locks each loop to prevent slipping. The wood cannot budge. He secures all 4 corners using the exact same technique. Next, he stretches the hide across the bottom, using the remaining vines to lash it down. A second piece of crab shell is fastened to the bow, shaping a sharp point. With that, a notification panel slides into view. The crude shell raft is officially complete. Carrying capacity is 80 kilograms, moving at a walking pace in calm water. Durability is 30 with no skills. He notes the number carefully. He figures he must repair it before the second crossing. The raft slides along the edge of the coral ring, weighted down with dead coral so the tide cannot carry it. His spear is splintered, but those reef lizard bone teeth he lashed to the head are solid. He rebinds them tighter with fresh line, wrapping a second tooth along the side as a jagged barb. A working life gets rebuilt with far worse tools in even worse weather. The morning reef report runs at sunrise, rolling intel right down his line of vision in clean fragments because Blood Crab Island got locked in last night. The island lies 400 meters south of Tide Rock, give or take 50, unowned. Danger level is low to medium. featuring blood crabs estimated at levels 4 to 5, counting 3 or 4, aggressive behavior when fruit juice touches sea. Contents include a red fruit cluster, hardwood roots, crab shells, and freshwater moss. On the north slope, plus a hidden chest under dead palm roots near the curve inside is a freshwater coral basin blueprint, island trait, red shell defense. Best landing point is the northern inner shore, away from the southern sandbar. Claim the core after clearing the crabs. Warning if fruit juice drips into the surf, they swarm. A double warning, talk about high stakes. The perfect plan writes itself in his head as he ties the last knot, land north away from the fruit, gathering the red clusters with a dry cloth bag, no drops, bait fish from. A tide pool will draw one crab away at a time, letting him kill them in single file. Move slowly, finding the chest before the third crab gets curious. Repair the spear if it breaks. Before pushing off, he opens the island market for the first time, opening right inside his eyelids. It is a simple listing scroll: cheap rope, cheap wood, dried meat, fresh fish, basic knives, salt, cloth, bait, and water. Filters, charcoal. Prices are listed in island coins, with bundled rates next to most. Categories: pulling 6 small shellfish from yesterday's haul out of his inventory. He sets them as a bundle, clicking auto list at the suggested rate. Within a count of 40, a buyer named Tide Channel 7 scoops the bundle. Island coins land in his balance. Cash on hand is the difference between getting rated or not, so he spends absolutely nothing yet. 3 minor handles in chat are still asking how a coral owner jumped the rankings yesterday, scrolling past them is their only answer. The shell raft easily holds his weight when he kneels on it, pushing off with the spear. Laying flat, he paddles. 400 meters south is slow. The pale coral teeth on the edge of his ring slowly fade far behind him. Blood Crab Island looks much bigger than his starter island from the water shore. His dark sand on the north curve, lighter south, and the south sandbar is bristling with red-tinged shells half buried in the wet sand. One crab is already in view near the south sandbar, claws up. He is the size of a dinner plate, glaring at the water like it owes him something. He lands north, where the inner shore is shallow enough to wade the last 10 meters. The raft gets beached, weighed down with 2 heavy stones. A clay marker is planted on dry sand, and his circle is kicked wider than yesterday's because the report told him where everything is, and he wants all of it inside. Red fruit clusters sit at the foot of a hardwood with exposed, curling roots. Carefully, none of them touching, he harvests the cluster into a fold of the lizard hide. He repurposed it as a bag. Nothing breaks or drips, right by the North Shore tide pool. He spots 3 small silver fish. He scoops them right up using his crab shell guard. One fish goes into his coconut bait cup, while the other 2 are placed on a flat rock. He drags the baited rock toward the inner edge of the shellfield, preparing the trap. He crouches low behind a curved root. Within 3 minutes, the first crab spots the bait. The beast scuttles over slowly with claws raised, lowering its head to crack the silver fish. He sneaks right behind the creature, ready to strike. He drives the spear straight into the joint. It wedges deep between the back plate and the second leg, lifting the crab off the sand. The crab twists, snapping its claws, but the weapon is buried deep. He delivers a second strike. One hand drives the spear butt straight through, one down. Dragging the heavy catch into the claim circle, he harvests it quickly and stores the meat. A second crab is already moving along the wet shore. They notice when one goes missing. He baits the target sideways, tossing the second silver fish along with a small pebble. The distraction works, turning the crab away from the shore. He strikes the joint just like before. 2 down, he wipes the sweat off his forehead, breathing heavily. A third crab charges from the south sandbar, fast, aggressive, clearly angry. The fruit juice did not attract it, but the smell of dead crab did. A rookie mistake, honestly. Stepping back, he plants his foot and lunges. The spear connects, but the shaft cracks. The massive crab jerks sideways, snapping the bone tip of the spear right off inside the joint. Its sharp tip remains lodged in the beast, leaving him holding nothing but a broken, headless stick. Now bleeding and furious, the monster turns on him while he stands unarmed. A broken stick left, because of course, weapons always break on the third one. He sprints inside the claim circle, heading along the curve toward the rocks from the tide warning. It chases right behind him. Crabs never give up when they are bleeding. Ahead, 2 black rocks flagged in his report sit 1.5 meters apart. They form a narrow gap where the rising surf rushes in faster than it can escape. He leaps over the gap. The crab follows, but the crashing surf slams the beast sideways. Its thick back plate catches on the stone, wedging the creature tight. It cannot even turn. Climbing back over the dry side, he grabs a heavy stone and smashes it down. He smashes the joint behind its eye. That is 3. The kill flag appears. Level 4 blood crab defeated. It drops meat, shell, and core fragments. The fragments hum with the same power as the core shard from yesterday. Next, he finds the hidden chest half buried under dead palm roots, just like the report promised. Using the broken spear to lever the roots up, he pries the chest free. Its lid pops open easily since he is the only active owner on this island. Inside, a freshwater coral basin blueprint rests right on top of a cloudy fragment. It is a pearl hook fragment, which the system labels as low quality but real. He quickly moves both items to his inventory. Now, he spots a thick freshwater moss patch. Peeling off a square the size of a placemat, he packs it away carefully. He tucks it into his lizard hide bag, letting any excess water drip back so nothing wastes. Finally, he reaches the unclaimed island core, nestled in the hollow of a massive hardwood root. The system displays a 4-choice prompt. It is time to make a decision. He absorbs it, shattering the core, and the claim circle pulses pale blue. Instantly, everything inside the circle is pulled straight into his inventory. Even the untouched red fruit and the heavy roots he planned to leave behind are swept up. Shells are stacked in the corner near the moss bag. Outside, trees bend inward. Black rocks soften into wet shapes in the crashing surf. The island is unmaking. Disappearing, he pushes his slow shell raft out before the inner channel closes. He lies flat, paddling hard. This 400 meters back is incredibly brutal. The shifted wind and a heavy passenger make the raft sit dangerously low. Durability ticks down twice. Finally, he makes landfall on his coral ring. He beaches the craft, secures it with heavy stones, and turns around to watch. The ring is changing, not unmaking, evolving. The shallow fish pool deepens. It is widening. A second basin opens near the south curve, filling with water. This is definitely not seawater. He scoops a handful, tasting cold, familiar freshwater seep. It is cleaner than the starter island supply. Red shells line the new edge. They form a low ring tagged as an active red shell defense. Sharp coral teeth have doubled. The flat area is now bedroom-sized. The upgrade reads Evolved to Reef Camp. The freshwater coral basin is ready. The fish pool is expanded, the defense ring active, and storage increased. He sits on the new floor. Finally, a moment of rest since waking up. The survival math actually works. He lists the fresh blood crab meat immediately. 5 kilograms go up at a bundled rate, and the listing sells instantly. It takes under 30 seconds. Crab meat is rare, and buyers are desperate. Players have severe food anxiety. Next, he lists a small batch of moss water. He sets a luxury price just to test them. A high-tier owner bites. They happily pay a 50% premium and ask how he got fresh water. He sends no reply back. Still, that buyer's handle remains visible on the order. He prefers to avoid that name for now, but then a second handle appears. This active competitor is sweeping up local traffic, buying up resources at insane speeds. He pays double the standard bundle rate for cheap wood and rope. He sweeps up every single listing. Wood, rope, and rusty knives, gone. Basic axes are overpaid for. The buyer's name is Masio Jin, a basalt owner. A tiny ranking dot marks his island near the regional top. Our guy waits. Buying anything now would only tag him on the wrong side of things. Being tracked is highly dangerous. Once the sweep finally ends, he makes his move. He buys a coil of better rope, an upgraded rusty knife, and 2 pieces of cloth. He adds a fishing net, spends his coins, and secures his tools. The market closes. Chat is buzzing about Masio Jin's massive buying sweep. Messages fly past. Most users are guessing what a basalt owner wants. Some joke that he is stockpiling resources to build a slave dock. Others warn that he already has a slave fleet and needs the rope. Someone uploads a blurry, low-resolution photo of a massive chain of boats. They have core branding hooks mounted on each prow, making the chat go quiet. The chilling photo is older, but the conversation quickly moves on. The crowd moves on, he does not. The panel remains open in his vision. He turns back to his camp. The freshwater basin needs a secure cover. He uses his upgraded rusty knife to carve a flat crab shell into a lid. He places it over the basin, weights it down, and works on the pool. The dirty pool kills fish, so he adds a shell filter near the raft. He climbs onto the dry side to check the hole. 3 cracks, none of them deep. He tars them with crab fat. heated over a small driftwood fire under shelter of the dead branches he dragged in yesterday. Warm food keeps a worker going. His chat pings with a direct message thread. The system prompt reads, Sender Masikjin, a basalt owner. His hand pauses over his rusty knife as he opens it. The message is short, claiming he has noticed him, a coral owner with this much market liquidity so early on. He says it is a problem. The system is still trying to classify it. Then he writes that he will leave his coral alone if he sends a complete list of every resource moved through the market over the last 2 days. He calls this a generous offer. He closes the message without replying. That is going to be a problem. Sleep can wait as the sky turns purple and the water around his ring starts settling down for the night. He decides not to lock tomorrow's target yet because he wants to see what appears on the basic sea map first. It updates as the light fades, showing 2 new silhouettes in his radar circle. First is a small, uninhabited Shaw Island to his east, marked as a blank fishing zone. Second is a small, owned island to his northeast. Its icon flashes yellow because the owner is alive. The flickering, according to the legend, means active combat is underway on that owned island. The legend has a second line in smaller print. If the owner core breaks during combat, the owner is erased, and the island resets within 1 tide cycle. He locks the owned island silhouette for tomorrow's morning reef report. The map closes, lying down on the dry side of the platform, his rusty knife close to his hand in the beached raft. Behind him, alongside the second basin of cold water and his red shell ring catching the final purple twilight, sleep is slow. The safer and easier choice is his dock instinct, urging him to head for the unknown Shaw Island. Safe or dangerous, the morning report will show his path. He finally falls asleep. The morning reef report triggers before he even wakes. The panel is scrolling when he sits up. The target is 600 meters northeast, owned by Hansu Fisher. Island type is a silverfish shaw. The island trades in silverfish, with traps along the east shore and a bait hut. Inside is a drying rack and a freshwater barrel 1/3 full. Structures are damaged. Hansu is fighting off 3 hostile boarders. They belong to a raid skiff registered under Masikjin. A 4th raider is on the skiff in the shallows with a core branding hook. The owner core is cracked. The win condition is to claim it first. Is the east traps, right where the raiders have their backs turned to the sea. Warning, if the core is branded, Hanso is erased and the island falls under Masikjin's flag within 1 tide cycle. That warning gets read 3 times. His dock instinct says to skip. The Shaw is closer and unowned. It does not have 4 armed men on it, and it will still be there in a week, but his instinct is wrong. He gets up, pushing his raft into the water. Lying flat on his belly, he paddles hard. 600 meters takes longer than yesterday, because the wind is against him, and his raft's durability ticks down. 3 more times during the crossing. Finally, the eastern fish traps come into view. Through the salty spray, he breathes hard. The battle is already visible. Long before he can hear it, a woman in a wet brown jacket stands in the shallows. She swings a fishing spear with both hands near the traps. 3 men surround her. They form a loose curve on the sand, while a 4th stands in the prow of a boat. The long skiff is anchored 5 meters out, and the man on board holds a heavy chain. A heavy metal branding hook on a chain he has only ever seen in old photos. So it is fast, that is obvious. Her fishing spear gives her a massive reach advantage. It is far longer than what the border guards carry. One of them rushes in low. He takes a sharp thrust to his forearm, stepping back and swearing. Another moves in. He aims high, gets a heel kick to the gut, and falls into the shallow water. He has cut one of her drawing lines, standing on it because he knows it is important. The 4th man on the skiff barks out orders, slowly swinging the chain in his hand. Leaving his raft 15 meters off, the young man silently slides into the cold water. He swims up behind the dry shore, right where the guards have their backs turned. His experience as a dock worker is his only real advantage here, from his leather bag. He pulls sharp blood crab shells from yesterday's haul, jagged, broken plates. With ridged, dangerous edges, he scatters them in a loose half-moon along the wet sand. Right in their likely retreat path, and watch, because this is pure genius. They are bound to step on these barefoot. The report did warn about this skiff being equipped with low-grade gear. The skiff's anchor line runs from the prow back down to a coil tied off on a wooden stake driven deep into the wet sand, barely noticed. Crawling low and staying out of sight, he cuts the line with his rusty knife. The blade slices through the thick rope in 3 swift strokes. The line falls, and the skiff begins to drift. A second later, the man on board notices the slack. He shouts out, drops his heavy chain, and desperately grabs the prow rail. The boat is broadside to the surf now, and the tide is pulling it away sideways. Quickly, he pulls out his coconut bait cup filled with seawater and silver minnows. He hurls it hard into the deep water right behind the guards, 2 reef fish that had been hiding in the shallows from all the noise suddenly whip around. Racing toward the splash, they draw a swirling cloud of other reef fish with them. The water right in front of the guards erupts into a flickering silver panic. Startled, the first guard steps back. His heel lands hard on a sharp shell. He screams and collapses. Soyet sees the shift instantly. Talk about perfect timing. She would later mention she had been counting down her final minutes on this earth, believing she had 0 time left the moment she saw the anchor line go slack. She stopped counting and started killing. She charges toward the second guard, thrusting her long spear at full extension while his balance is completely off. The spear point drives deep under his ribs. He collapses. The third guard tries to leap over his fallen comrade, but his foot finds another jagged shell. Soyet is already moving, slamming into him before he can right himself. Her spear butt strikes his temple hard. He goes completely limp. Seeing the disaster, the skiff man decides to cut his losses. Scrambling to the bow of his drifting boat, he drops the chain and grabs a paddle. The skiff is already 20 meters out and moving fast. He never looks back. The first guard rolls in pain on the wet sand, clutching his bleeding foot. Soyet plants the spear point an inch from his throat, her steady voice chilling him. Then Seok Gun's would have been, knowing that if the man wants to save face, he must roll into the surf and start swimming. He rolls, then swims. The skiff drifts slowly out of range because the wind is fighting against it too. The dry shore. Quietens. Hansoy turns to Seok Gun, her fishing spear raised, her left hand bleeding from a deep cut along the knuckle. Wet hair sticks to her jaw, her eyes scanning him rapidly from head to toe. It is the look of someone who has just survived a brutal fight, sizing up a newcomer who arrives right afterward. Seok Gun tells her his name, his island size, and the fact that he was the one who cut the anchor line. She introduces herself as Hansoy, explaining that the raiders hit her at dawn, that she had held them off for nearly 30 minutes, and that her core was cracked. Seok Gun had not mentioned that last detail yet, but the screen had displayed it. She already knew the system announced it. He asks how long it has been cracked. About 10 minutes, she replies, adding that the skiff pilot grazed her core with Brandon hook during his second pass. He missed the brand by a hand's width, but cracked the casing. Now her countdown is running. Seok Gun asks what the timer reads. She says 4 minutes. He double-checks the reef report displayed on his HU on the side of his vision, placing the timer at 3:40. There is no time to hesitate. His panel pings, stating owner Hansoy has a cracked core with 4 minutes to collapse. If it fails, the owner is erased. Actions for nearby owner Seok Gun appear. Claim her core under conquest, erasing Hansoy on absorption, or bind her core under Coral Devour authority. Then, the owner survives as a core-bound vassal under his island system. Decline, and she is erased upon collapse, a third option that leaves her free and alive on her own island is not what the system is offering. Talk about a brutal, zero-mercy choice. She is erased, absorbed, or bound. Seok Gun knows player chat debated this for 2 days. There is no free vassal route, only bind or break. He explains this to Soy. She reads the prompt on her own system screen, having access to the same notifications. As she scans the text, her face shows the tragic realization that there is only one door left open, and it is the single path nobody wants to choose. Her jaw does not tighten, and her shoulders do not slump in defeat. Instead, she looks at Seok Gun, then at the shattered drawing rack behind him, and whispers the word slave in a cold, hollow tone. It is how someone says a word they never wanted to learn. He assures her she won't be like Sajin's captive slaves, promising she will have a proper role on his coral island. She can eat his food, sleep in safety, and handle the fishing, since he lacks those skills entirely. Besides, the survival bond is enforced by the system, not him. The screen, he notes, does not offer an option to free her. Without the bind, she vanishes in 3 minutes. Soy mutters that she understands, though her voice lacks any warmth or willing acceptance. Instead, she sounds like a survivor who has simply run out of choices and is facing the hard truth. He tells her he is about to initiate the bind. She tells him to act before the countdown ends. He presses his hand against her sternum as directed by the system prompt, waiting for confirmation. Once confirmed, the binding process completes silently. No dramatic flashes, no light. A slow update rolls. Corebound owner Seok Gun binds survivor Hansoy. Silverfish Shaw trait is extracted, and her Fisher class is linked. With her island linked as an outer reef under his coral anchor, Soy sits down. On the wet sand, pressing her forehead against her knees for a silent count of 6. Silence stretches for those 6 seconds. Lifting her head, she tells him in a flat voice that her drying rack is still where it was, but her fish traps have been cut. They need to salvage both before the tide goes out because the retreating tide on this stretch takes the fish with it. The traps can be repaired within an hour using the rope he bought. She promises that by sunset, with a flat surface and some salt, she can process the entire catch into dried food packs. About their binding agreement, she refuses to speak until tomorrow. He agrees it is fair. They work. The silverfish Shaw trait feels different in his coral system than the red shell defense did. The shape of the coral is unchanged, unlike the basin, which altered. Something opens. The fish pool on the new edge of the camp deepens and a second pool opens beside it, longer, narrower, and the silver fish from her island begin arriving in the new pool, in a thin, steady stream that flows along the active link stretching across the sea, connecting her Shaw to his ring. Her damaged island sits as an outer reef under his anchor now, and attached territory smaller than before due to the severe raid damage, but still fully functional. Soyani cross back to the reef camp on the shell raft. 2 trips are needed because the raft cannot carry both of them and the cargo. First trip takes her with the drying gear. The second is him with salt in the freshwater bag and the reconstructed drying lines. By the time the sun climbs halfway up, the new pool holds a respectable 30 fish. The drying rack is set up on a small frame on the dry side of camp. Soy already has her hands deep in salt and silver scales, working quickly. 10 kilograms of fresh silver fish go onto the market at the bundle rate. Buyers are fast. The rest is kept off the market. Everything left goes onto Soy's drying rack, because she is right that stored food acts as a shield against bad weather and hostile neighbors. A direct message arrives while he is laying out the second tray on the rack. The notification prompt pops up, reading Sender Masakjin, Basalt owner. He reads the text immediately without even sitting down. Masakjin writes that the raid skiff, which failed to brand the fishing island this morning, returned short one crewman, carrying a story about a mysterious coral owner who cut their rope. That coral owner, he claims, is apparently him. One last chance he demands next to return the captive girl and her silver fish Shaw trade back to him in full, alongside a complete apology. In exchange, he will call off the second skiff that is currently being readied at his dock. If he does not hand her over by sunset, he warns the second vessel will not be a simple skiff. He sends no reply. The sun dips lower. The coral teeth around the edge of the reef camp catch the low light, throwing small, pointed shadows across the new floor. Soy stands on the outer reef, kneeling beside the longer pool, watching the silver fish swim in through the glowing link. Her hand is on the lip of the pool, and that lip is entirely his, while the silver fish continues streaming in under his anchor. The system has placed her under his protection, and the sun sinks. The message thread pings again with Masakjin's name for a second warning. Reading the first message one more time from top to bottom, he lets the second wait. Calculations run slowly through his head before his eyes drift towards Soy, then to the new pool, from the pool to the raft, and past the raft to the basin rests under its crab shell. Coral teeth catch the last light. Fading sun. Seok-jin opens the second message to read it. Reading the first message a third time reveals exactly what Jin was doing all afternoon. Market manipulation. Jin is buying up Seok-jin's rope, wood, and knife margins. He even posted a public direct message about liquidity to bait the chat. 100 accounts repeat it. Now Jin wants a full resource list. Asking for 2 days of transaction history is basically demanding his coral layout. It is cheap intel. It is the fake generosity of a demanding buyer. No deal still. Jin wants that list. Of course he does. So he looks up from the long pool as the system alert rings. Their bind link lets her read every message sent to him. Cold link, it feels like wet rope dragging across bare skin. She spots the sender name and her jaw instantly tightens. Before reading, Seok-jin checks the open market to see the current. Chat has stopped joking. They are talking about the rope sweep. ITER accounts are openly asking if anyone saw this new trait. They want to know who acquired the silverfish Shaw this morning. Another user replies that one of Soak Jean's crews just limped back. They returned empty-handed to the docks, sharing wild stories of cut rope. A small account posts a side-by-side comparison of his island's massive growth. The comments fly fast. Some call his hard work absolute trash. But get this, another player replies that trash is the wrong word. Over on Tide Channel 7, his first shellfish buyer makes a move. The user asks if Soak Jean is selling bulk crab meat and at what price. No reply. Instead, he opens the market and posts a listing. He lists 5 kilograms of dried silverfish, which is half of his first tray. The dried fish carries a small premium because it is rare. Tide Channel 7 scoops the bundle in seconds, adding a generous tip on top. 2 other buyers from adjacent zones immediately line up for more. Soy sees the orders. The tension in her shoulders finally drops. Food sold quietly is food the next raiders will never find. Before opening the message, a system panel rolls down his vision. The system is finally adapting and pacing itself to his movements. Core capacity updated. 2 absorbed cores and linked territories are active. It lists 1 bound owner and 3 extracted island traits. Traits include red shell defense, a freshwater basin, and the silverfish Shaw. The devour rate is stable, leaving 2 extraction slots wide open. 1 slot is safely reserved against any accidental overflow of traits. He can queue useless traits tomorrow without risking his coral stability. System behaving, but that counter is going to matter very soon. Across the pool, Soy has her sleeves rolled up, already hard at work. She is scaling silverfish from the 3rd tray with focused dedication. She works with quiet purpose, keeping the tasks she truly values. His panel shows the silverfish Shaw grants a 30% stocking boost. It also provides a secondary boost to overall bait quality. To him, the new bonus in his coral feels like a steady arrival of tiny silver. Bodies traveling along the bind line. It is not a number, but something the panel does not even have a column for. He had not truly understood this bind link until he felt it run cold under the second direct message, sitting cross-legged on the dry side of the camp. He pulls up the core-bound section of the system menu for the very first time. Reading the contract before signing was a luxury he never got to do. Owner Cotun's list of bound survivors shows 1 Hanoi Fisher-class silverfish Shaw trade. Extracted and linked from outer territory, a damaged island survival. Anchor under the coral devour core. Daily upkeep costs 15% of coral energy per bound. Survivor at this scale, upkeep will adjust with coral growth. Bond. Visibility is clear. All sensory feedback runs both ways under active threat. Conditions regarding bond severability. No clean release is available under current system rules. Bound survivors are erased on owner death within 1 tide cycle, 15%. 1 survivor takes 15% of the coral's energy daily, right off the top, before he can do anything, whatever he planned to spend coral energy on today, tomorrow. And the day after is 15% thinner now. The freshwater basin draws coral energy. A fish pool draws coral energy. Any deep report draws coral energy. That heavy crab shell lid that hums when he covers the basin draws power too. 15% of all of it goes to keep Soy alive, simply because the only door the system left open had her name on it. Then he reads the last 2 lines again. Bond severability, no clean release. Erased on owner death within 1 tide cycle. She lives if he lives, and he lives if he does not get sloppy. 1 mistake means death, exactly what Suction is waiting for. A small part of him, the heart that worked night shifts alongside men who smelled of fish and bad luck, takes that harsh translation and pockets it. Honest work. The math is honest too. There is nothing to feel good about. Twilight sits low on the basin lid, the sky out. Past the coral teeth is going copper at the rim, under a deep, dark blue that people only ever see over open water. The tide on the inner channel comes back slowly, and the surf, where the long pool meets the seaward edge, makes a soft hiss like sand letting go of a wave. 2 small silver fish jump in the new pool because something under the surface startled them, and that something is the active trait working. Soy does not look up as the 3rd tray fills near the dry side of the camp. The coral teeth catch the copper light, throwing sharp little pointed shadows across the surface, and one of those shadows lands on the back of his hand. He moves his hand and the shadow moves with it. The basic sea map opens for a check, his own Silhouette where Soy's Shaw used to be now registers under his flag, smaller than it was. When linked, an unknown Shaw to the east is still pinging. 2 more pings have resolved in. Half-range circle since morning. A third silhouette lies northwest. Faint, unowned, unshaded. A fourth silhouette due north shows a larger, owned icon. Steady yellow and not flickering. A fifth silhouette has appeared at the outer edge of the half-range circle, and this new icon is darker than the others, with more weight too. It is the kind of dot a basalt-class island shows up as when the map is not. Zoomed close enough to render the ship rig docks along its coast. This fifth dot's weight reads clearly. The map closes. Make no mistake, Suction is already closer than he was yesterday. He opens the status section and counts. The coral teeth are doubled and holding. Freshwater basin full, lid sealed, long pool stocking, drying rack set and 2 trays ready. Curing is underway, 1 tray loaded, raft beached and 3 cracks tarred. Durability holds at 20. His wrapped rusty knife is sharp. The spear is rebuilt. With 2 bone teeth it holds. His hide bag is light. Coconut is refilled. Clay marker used. Island coins are modest but growing. Soy is fed and working. Cold twilight runs across the reef floor, turning it deeper copper as the surf pulls back. Pale grit shows in the trough, where sand falls away into the coral shelf. Along the trough, small pink polyps open for the night. 2 reef shrimp move along a coral finger near his heel. Slow, transparent antennae are checking for the next thing to push past them. A flat fish the size of his palm slides through the gap between the long pool's seaward edge and the open water, going in, not out. The trait is working again. A reef that knows where to send dinner is a reef that pays for itself. Talk about luck. He keeps his hand off the second message for 1 more breath, then he opens it. Cinder Masak Jin Basalt Owner, 2 attachments load. Before the body of the message, the first attachment is a single still image, a long black hull, a basalt gray deck, and monster bone ribs braced along the top sides. 6 oars per side are stacked into rigid frames. The prow is shaped into a chained ram. Beak with a core branding hook, the size of his torso, mounted on a swivel above. A tag along the lower edge of the image reads Basalt Warsk 9, Masokin. Basalt Owner is deployment ready. Underneath the tag is a smaller line. Crew complement 12, 2 Corebound boarders and 10 free fighters, armament. Monster bone rams, Hulkrusher hooks, and 2 slave dock branding chains. Estimated range from his coral is 3 hours under sail. The second attachment is a route. Plot: a thin red line draws itself from a dot on the larger basalt silhouette. Northwest of him, it runs southeast across open water, bending once around a coral shelf that is not his, and terminates on the icon the map has been calling his reef camp since yesterday. The time to arrival count along the line reads as 7 hours 22 minutes, declining. Below the attachments, the message body reads short and clean. Seokshin writes that the first skiff failed because the first skiff was a courtesy. This is no joke. The second hull is a basalt war. Skiff 9 departs the basalt docks at the next tide change. He writes with 12 board and orders to brand the silverfish Shaw trait directly out of the bounder's anchor while she stands on his coral. The branding will not erase her, he writes helpfully. It will transfer her bond to his flag, leaving his coral intact for him to absorb at leisure and leave him alive long enough to write him an apology. A counteroffer, he writes, is still available. Until the first tide change, the counteroffer is the same as before. He wants bound fisher and the trait voluntarily handed over, plus a manifest of every resource he has moved to the market in the last 2 days. In exchange, he will recall Warsk 9 and call his coral protected territory under Basalt Owner. Courtesy which he assures him has commercial value. The last paragraph of the message is shorter. He writes that a third party has expressed interest in his coral. This third party, he writes, is a subordinate of his named Park G. Mangrove Knife Island owner with a personal grudge against unranked coral owners that he has not bothered to explain. Park G, he writes, is currently moored beside Basalt Dock 3 with 2 Corebound fighters of his own, and he volunteered to escort Warskiff 9 for free. The next tide change. Seokshin closes in 7 hours and 22 minutes. Below that, a tiny gray system message appears. This isn't Seojin's direct message. A red receipt sends to Basalt owner Mauk Jin. With the reply window open, T-Gun just closes it. Soy has stopped working. Her hands rest on the third tray, completely frozen. They aren't moving, and the cold in their bind link drops another freezing degree. She is reading the system message through him, whether either of them wanted it or not. She Doesn't turn around, the rigid line of her shoulders is back where it was this morning when the spear was in her hands and the countdown was ticking away. A quiet, passive T-Gun's gaze shifts from her shoulders to the basin, the pool, and the coral. Teeth, he looks at the beached raft, the broken spear, and the dark dot on the closed map he can't see anymore. 12 are aboard, 2 Cora-bound, 10 free, along with 10 bone rams too. Branding chains 7 hours and 22 minutes, plus a mangrove knife owner with 2 Cora-bound fighters of his own is riding along for free, nursing a grudge he hasn't explained. Of course it is 12 plus 3, they always send 3 more than one can count. Opening inventory, a coil of better rope 1, a rusty knife with bundled edge 1, 2 squares of cloth, small fishing net 1, pearl hook. Fragment 1, bone teeth 4, hide strips several, red shells plenty of them. Plenty of driftwood, vines several lengths, modest island coins, crude shell raft. Blueprint is already used, coral basin installed, no sailboat. Blueprint yet, bastion blueprint, still locked, the trade extraction. Hugh has 2 slots open, coral devour core capacity reads at 38% under current. Upkeep, this math is a major problem, he needs a whole new strategy. Starts running in the back of his head as he stands up, anchor points along. The seaward edge can take red shell traps below the tide line, and a row of bone teeth set into the coral lip. The teeth can take the strain because they are the long pool can be turned from a stocking pool into a bait pool with 1 shifted gate. A second drying rack can be raised on the dry side to hold the Knights catch off the sand, so a skiff boarding through the surf won't sweep it away. The freshwater basin needs a second lid and a stone weight. Because a branding chain swung wide will hit that lid first, a fishing spear. Longer than his goes by the seaward edge where reach matters, his broken spear rebuilt with the bone teeth stays close for hand-to-hand combat. 7 hours and 22 minutes isn't 5 hours. 5 hours yesterday was tight, but 7 and change tonight is doable. Doable if he doesn't sleep. Soya is already turning, speaking in the same flat voice from this morning. She has counted 3 key things and wants to say them just once. The drying rack can move in 20 minutes, and the bait gate can shift in 10. She can teach the fish to read the new gate within an hour because the trait belongs to her and she knows how to use it. After that, she says she repair traps, braid line, and guard the basin lid until the basalt hull is on the half-range circle. Then, she will hold the seaward edge with her own spear until the countdown runs out. He tells her indirectly through the bind because that is how it must go, since 90 minutes of prep inside 7 hours and 22 is workable. And the rest of the time is his to spend on traps and until she doesn't say anything kind in return. A cold nod is all he gets, his last act. Before the long night starts, he must open the morning reef reports. Time to switch tomorrow's scan target, clearing the unknown shoal to his east. It drops off the queue, the default clears, and a priority option appears. The system map just flagged both Wars 9 and Park Gant. They are incoming. Under Basalt owner registration, he immediately locks the threat priority option. Confirmed, the system acknowledges tomorrow's report will actively scan Wars 9. Scanning their mangrove knife escort instead of an island reef, smart defensive move. The system tag reads, 1 free intel scan on the incoming Basalt escort. Tomorrow's island scan is forfeit. That warning he does not need to reread. Night is completely black now. Coral teeth catch the very first stars. They scatter across the long pool in tiny, shifting pieces of cold starlight. Soy stands at the bait gate already. Her foot gently shifts a slat, watching. The silver fish dart. A second drying rack is raised on the dry side. He secures it. The basin lid receives a second weight. His broken spear is ready. Tucked in his belt with 2 bone teeth wrapped tight, he will not flinch. Work faster instead. Deep in his chest, the coral devour core hums louder. 7 hours and 22 minutes remain, then 6 hours, soon only 5. Honestly, that is the moment time stops and pure, suffocating panic begins. He is already falling behind, so guards the seaward edge with her long spear. He finishes the second drying rack while preparing the next heavy basin lid. The bait gate sits right where she left it. Silver fish flicker past. Slipping in and out, the trait guides them automatically. Near the gate, a bone tooth set into the coral catches a glint of starlight on every wave. The tide moves. Beneath his ribs, the core hums at a low pitch. He knows this sound. Park Gant and 12 men are 7 hours out. They approach with the tide, too close for comfort, too fast for his liking. Leaving Soy on guard, he patrols the dry reef. Sharp coral teeth stand Doubled to the east and south, red shell traps hide in 3 pockets. Positioned carefully below the tide line, a brand new row of bone teeth waits. He rigged them like cruel fish hooks, designed for heavy boots instead of mouths. The trap runs along the reef lip, stretching straight toward the broken raft. He dragged that raft up and pinned it down with 2 tight knots. If an intruder tries to step on it, both vine knots will fail. They will plunge straight down onto a hidden row of sharp bone teeth. That upright pallet is a deadly step waiting for the wrong foot. Talk about brutal. He passes the basin, touching the surface for one brief second before letting go. The system panel under his ribs is far more useful than any lid. He pulls up the inventory, 1 coil of strong rope, 1 rusty knife. It has a protected edge, 2 cloth squares, a small net, 1 fragment. He holds 16 bone teeth. He spent the night stripping clean leather hide. Plenty of red shells, crab armor, and blood crab meat drying on racks. 1 square of freshwater moss, 3 hardwood roots, and plenty of driftwood. Modest island coins remain. The crude raft blueprint is already used. The freshwater coral basin is active. Core capacity rests at 41%. Under current upkeep, 2 extraction queue slots remain open for further upgrades. Coral energy burned on the second basin lid. 1 glance was enough, and he closed it. Sliding the panel shut, he saw the eastern sky bruising, not quite sunrise yet. But dawn was on its way. The tide was dropping, the bait gate hissing softly. It drained the pool back into the open sea. Nearby, Soy remained completely still. She didn't turn from the edge, but the cold bond between them warmed up slightly. It felt like a lamp lighting a dark room. Soon, the bruised sky paled. Just as dawn broke, the morning reef report popped open on its own. The system didn't even ask him what he wanted scanned. It already knew. First target, the Basalt War Skiff 9, registered to the owner, Masak Jin. Sailing under his flag, it was heavily reinforced with massive monster bones. Its keel measured 26 meters, carrying 12 crewmen, including 2 Korra-bound raiders. They served under Sajin's flag, while 10 cheap mercenaries worked on slave contracts. Their weapons included 2 front-facing branding chains and 1 core prow hook. 4 brutal hull crushers lined the sides, along with 6 massive oars per flank. These oars were mounted rigidly, backed by a bone sail rig stowed on deck. They could hit 6 knots rowing, or 8 under sail in following winds. But if that heavy basalt hull scraped against shallow reefs, they were done. The system report specifically noted it tracked straight, but turned incredibly slow. With its deep keel, the warskiff had to navigate narrow, shallow channels. Straying off course meant grounding instantly. Up front, those heavy branding chains. They required a completely clear line of sight to swing at the target. This meant the attack crew would be wide open. Meanwhile, the 2 Korra-bound raiders. They kept their survival anchors on the main basalt island, not this ship. So even if this war skiff sank, the system wouldn't actually erase them. Not unless their master chose to cut their cores, those 10 mercenaries though. They are easily panicked, plus Sajin had underpaid them to buy up local wood. This left his contract pool thin and cheap. Then there's the captain. He's a hired mercenary named Hampio, who had already lost 2 skiffs last season. He was only promoted to keep him loyal. Hampio is naturally cautious. But the moment someone spots a valuable prize, he gets wildly reckless. But wait, there was a warning at the bottom. The warskiff had orders. They must retreat if they lose even 2 free fighters early on. Sajin was willing to pay for hull repairs, but not cheap replacement crews. He would have smiled at that dry final line, but he wasn't laughing. He was in absolutely no mood to smile. Now, Target 2, Park G. Mangrove Knife Island owner, piloting his cutter alongside the main warskiff. It was a light, dark-timbered ship, carrying Park G and 2 raiders. Both raiders were bound to his core. For weapons, they carried mangrove blades. They kept hook ropes coiled along the rails, and 3 heavy boarding cleavers. Running on sails and oars, this nimble cutter topped out at 5 knots. Its weakness, that light hull would shatter instantly against sharp coral reefs. And the crew was tiny. Below that lay some interesting backstory on Park G. Before the Shard tide migration, he actually owned 3 whole coastal villages. 2 produced rope, 1 ran saltfish, and he lost them all almost immediately. A rival who could move an entire island crushed him, and now Sajin. They offered him a cheap contract on a mangrove cutter under one condition. He had to join 3 raids every quarter as a free escort. Park G has already been on 23 raids over 2 quarters because Sajin counts every cheap rope buyout. As a raid, his deep grudge against unranked coral owners stems from a village getting overrun by drift coral right before the migration, prompting him to blame all coral for his losses. The report notes quite neutrally that none of this is actually the coral's fault. But logic doesn't apply to a grudge. Meanwhile, that cutter is tiny, it will capsize instantly if the keel scrapes against any sharp coral teeth. Beneath the waterline, Park Ji himself fights up close using a heavy mangrove blade. He is decent in combat but exhausted. His two Korra-bound fighters are Doha and Kim Bora. Doha runs the hook rope while Kim Bora brandishes the boarding cleavers. Both have served him for a year without receiving pay. For 3 months, neither would be on this deck if Sajin hadn't offered Park Ji a grim chance at survival. That part of the report is asking. The obvious, Park Ji technically struck first. He closes the report. Soya is watching him from the seaward edge. He speaks to her quietly through their mental bond. Because shouting across the basin would echo too far, the enemy warship will approach from the northwest, while the cutter trails behind on a parallel path. The warship will commit to a chain swing within 30 meters because Han Pyo gets incredibly reckless once his crew spots the prize. Now watch, the trap is set. We'll try to flank the southern edge, since Park Ji read in the report that the southern side is shallow. Soya sends a message back through the bond, explaining that her bait gate can lure the silver fish along the south edge. In a wide arc to a low-draft cutter, it will look like a massive feeding swarm. If she pulses the gate, those silver fish will scatter at the perfect moment, sending the low-draft cutter straight into the red shell traps before the helmsman even has a chance to realize what just happened. Her cold voice is sharper than the bond itself, which he takes as a sign she is fully awake. Small part of him realizes he would have paid serious money for a fisher of her high caliber on the market docks 6 months ago. He brushes the thought aside. Cold calculations matter now. The sun rises over the water as they work. 5 hours shrink to 3, then 1, 2 dots appear on the horizon. The basic navigation map confirms their identity before the icons even load. Wars 9 takes northwest line exactly as predicted. The cutter maintains a parallel path. 200 meters out, both hulls slow. Han Pyo stands at the tiller, briefly taking his hand off the wheel to point at the reef before gripping it again. Park Ji stands at the prow, blade across his shoulders. Doha crouches low with the hook rope. Kim Bora lines up her cleavers. Along the cutter's rail, a tiny reef shrimp crawls near his heel on the coral. And the core beneath the basin hums. Soya raises her spear once and rests it on her shoulders. He opens the bait gate. Silvers rush through in a quick line, the leading edge of the swarm. Bending south along the curved lines Soya set last night, the back of the swarm thickens rapidly as more fish rush toward the opening. A flat fish slides through. A single reef shrimp tumbles from the gate right behind the swarm, and because shrimp are not subtle, the silver bar of fish curves along the south edge of his coral reef, skimming right over the first red shell trap pocket and continuing onward. From 200 meters away on a low cutter, the school looks like a soft-hearted feeding swarm. Park Gun's hand shifts on the tiller. His cutter swings south. War Skiff 9 holds northwest exactly as predicted, because Han Pyo reads only the depth, ignoring the swarm. The vessel's actual depth completely blind to the trap. Up front, War Skiff 9's chain team start their first chain swing 60 meters out. That massive branding chain rises off the deck in a sweeping arc. Han Pyo's voice echoes across the water, that raspy half shout of a captain naming a rich prize and its steep price all at once. Soy flinches near the edge but does not turn. The bond does the painful flinching for her. Work instead, he lifts his hand off the heavy basin lid. The iron chain crashes down. At 40 meters, its heavy end smacking the water, 10 meters short of the seaward reef. Through the spray, Han Pyo's booming voice calls out the second swing, 20 meters. Han Pyo plays it reckless on this second swing, exactly as the report forewarned. The heavy chain rises in a much flatter arc, the end skimming low across the water. For maximum reach, Han Pyo desperately wants that iron end to strike the basin lid right where the bond between Soy and the coral is thickest. The chain end flies over the seaward edge at 8 meters. Soy drops below the stone lip just as he told her to do before sunrise. The massive chain slams directly into the basin lid, which takes the impact. The heavy secondary weights absorb the rest of the crushing force. The lid does not budge. The chain end skips off the stone, splashing deep into the long pool below where the silverbacked fish have gathered. having trained them all night, so he knows exactly what they do. When something violent thrashes in their water, they scatter wildly, dragging the heavy chain. Deep into a maze of pool gates that lock it in tight, Hanpeo screams the order. To haul it back, the forward crew on War Skiff 9 begins pulling, sharp coral teeth. Hidden beneath the tide line, immediately snag the heavy links as they drag across the lip. Two massive bone protrusions lock onto the chain from underneath, and the retraction grindingly halts. The war skiff's heavy bow plunges violently downward into the surf. The chain remains under immense, lethal tension, and the vessel's massive wooden keel scrapes hard. The bow slams into solid coral. The keel grinds into a row of submerged traps. The war skiff suddenly jerks to a dead stop, throwing Hanpeo's entire chain crew straight off their feet. The secondary branding chain slides uselessly across the slick deck. Without anyone left to swing it, one fighter at midship pitches right over the side and plunges deep into the choppy seaward waters. Meanwhile, a second fighter on the bow frantically hacks at the snagged chain with a hand cleaver, but the blade gets wedged tight. In the very same coral, the young guardian watches from above, filing that detail away. Meanwhile, Park Gunt's cutter is already pressing deep into the southern pocket. Their hull strikes the red shell traps on the southern edge at 5 knots, exactly as predicted. And those traps react exactly the way red shells always do under sudden, heavy pressure. The shell goes brittle. Park Gunt bellows a desperate order at Doha through the chaos. An instruction the mental bond doesn't even need to translate, the strategic report already outlined. Every single command Park Gunt would give, Doha launches the hook rope far out and catches the solid coral lip above the basin. Instantly, Park Gunt shifts his full weight to the rope, fighting to haul his listing cutter backward. The line holds fast. It does not. A bone tooth the defender set last night along the coral lip catches the hook rope. Right where the rope runs over the edge, it starts fraying against that sharp tooth while Park Gant shouts. Doha quickly doubles up the hook. Kim Bora hurls her first boarding cleaver. It flies straight toward Soy's spear hand. She throws with deadly accuracy. The cleaver spins in incredibly fast, forcing Soy to raise her weapon. She manages to deflect the blow, but the cleaver strikes the spear's wooden shaft. She is just a simple fisher, not a trained soldier. The weapon knocks the spear clean out of her grasp. An unimaginable chill floods the defender's bond. Meanwhile, Doha is already scaling the southern edge, holding a second heavy hook. Kim Bora stands ready on the rail with another cleaver, while Park Gant advances. He leaps from the cutter onto the coral, gripping a heavy mangrove blade. His left hand stays free to secure the rope. Another enemy warrior pulls his stuck cleaver from the reef, scrambling quickly over the seaward edge. They back up the chain team as they make another move on the basin. More coral-bound raiders slide down the tilted prow, hungry for a fight. Honyo finally yelled out the massive bounty. 5 men breach the coral reef. Wait, the calculations are totally thrown off. Chaos will reign for 30 seconds. There is no way to hold every front. The defender must sacrifice one. By giving up a vulnerable position, they can strike back where the enemy is weak. Leaving the south pocket behind, Soy cleverly kicks her spear off the ground. She catches it midair, retreating defensively right along the sharp coral barrier. She keeps her eyes locked on the attackers, which is incredibly smart. These fresh invaders clearly do not understand just how dangerous this living reef is. But then Doha plants his foot down, only for a hidden bone tooth to spear right through his boot. Years of harsh training keep him silent. But as he recoils in pain, Kim Bora stumbles right behind him. Park Gant strides past them, heavy blade raised, eyes locked on the defender. The rumors of his personal vendetta were absolutely true, so the defender counterattacks. Honyo's fully exposed chain team at the front of Wars 9 is vulnerable. Their first chain is now hopelessly snagged on the jagged reef teeth below. The second chain lies completely abandoned because the warrior assigned to swing it fell into the sea. Their main vessel is stuck hard on the trap. The heavy waves smash the hull against the sharp reef. Honyo screams at his panicked men to chop the trapped chain loose using their heavy cleavers. But the tool gets jammed. The defender targets the main hook rope instead. The frayed rope secured by Park Gant stretches back to the cutter. The enemy vessel is currently balanced precariously on the red shell trap. With its hull brittle and exposed, it is incredibly vulnerable. The helmsman abandoned his post to join the assault on the reef. That single rope is actually the only thing keeping the vessel secured. If that rope snaps, game over. The waves will instantly smash them. The entire crew will certainly drown in seconds, and Park Gant knows this. He quickly positions his body defensively, guarding the critical rope at all costs. With an exhausted but heavy swing, he aims his massive blade high. But the strike is sluggish from lack of sleep, and the defender slips right under. He ducks the swing because going under is the only direction that avoids the sharp coral. As he slips under, he pulls the rusty, wrapped-edge knife right off his belt. He jams it into the rope, where the bone tooth has already done most of the work. Just 2 strokes, the rope snaps cleanly at the bone tooth. The cutter drifts out, its seaward edge catches the next coral tooth. As it swings past him, the brittle hull cracks completely open the rest of the way. Water floods in from the seaward side, and the vessel begins to sink. It vanishes in just 2 breaths, exactly as he predicted in the back of his mind. Even if his subconscious mind was never supposed to be running a whole island. Park Ji lets out a strange, choked sound, realizing his precious mangrove cutter is lost. It was his raid anchor, and losing it means his core is now completely exposed. The conquest interface flashes. Desperate, Park Ji swings his blade once again. This strike is blindingly fast. Park Ji is fighting for an anchor that is already gone. He sidesteps instead of ducking, since going under was a one-time trick. The rocky edge right behind him has another row of razor-sharp bone teeth to avoid. The weapon slashes at chest height. Instantly, his broken spear rises from his belt. The 2 bone teeth wrapped at its tip catch the incoming blade mid-swing. It is exactly what he rebuilt this spear to do. The enemy blade slides off. Park Ji stumbles back, shocked his attack was blocked, but our hero does not strike. Instead, the conquest interface starts pinging loudly at the back of his mind. The bond between Park Ji and his sinking cutter is rapidly fading away. With his vessel slowly going down, the vital link to his island core is also fraying. Our protagonist hooks his spear's bone teeth right into the enemy's weapon strap. With one sharp, sudden twist, the heavy blade flies straight from Park Ji's hand into the sea. He drops to one knee as the violent yank nearly tears his shoulder apart. The conquest interface flares to life the second his knee hits the coral. 3 main options flash under his name: break core, absorb core, or bind his core. Look closer, a hidden 4th option sits below the main 3. Capture the core-bound anchor tags before resolution. 2 tags remain, Doha and Kimbara. Only 12 seconds remain. Failure means the survivors are completely erased. He quickly selects the 4th option first, since it is the only one with a ticking countdown. Doha and Kimbara instantly load into his trade queue, filling it completely. The open slots he had this morning are now gone. Park Gunny glares up at him. He is stuck on one knee, while the conquest interface continues to pulse. The enemy's main island core to the northwest now lies entirely exposed. Taking advantage of this brief window of vulnerability, he taps Absorb Core. The system asks him to confirm the command, and he does, instantly removing Park Ji. The rival island shown at the far edge of his basic sea map goes completely dark. For just a brief second, it disappears before returning as a small silhouette. It is now claimed under his own flag, linked by a thin orange band across the map. The system labels this new path as an extracted mangrove trade route. Meanwhile, Doha and Kimbara are still standing frozen on the southern pocket of his coral reef. Neither of them moves. Their faces have turned a sickly, pale gray. It is the exact same look Soy had when her own bond collapsed yesterday. They stare at him like lost souls who just felt their final lifeline snap. Doha's foot is still pressed firmly on the bone tooth, refusing to move. Still, he hasn't budged. The protagonist sends a quick command through the system. An indirect whisper is much safer than speaking aloud to tell him to step back. Doha immediately obeys, yet Kimbara still grips the boarding cleaver tightly. The protagonist sends a silent alert, ordering her to place the weapon down. She sets it down at the basin, so it catches her breath heavily. She breathes like a sailor after a violent storm, refusing to look at them. Then she glares at him, and the cold in their connection drops further. That is the best he can hope for today. Now, he must handle the warship. Up on the enemy ship, Hampio's forward chain team is still trying desperately. They struggle to cut the first chain, while a second enemy boarder climbs up. He climbs up dripping wet, completely weaponless and shivering. Meanwhile, the coral-bound boarder from earlier stands on the coral just 6 meters away. He holds a heavy prow swivel hook, his frustrated face showing his clear fatigue. It is obvious he has absolutely no intention of fighting this battle anymore. Yet he cannot simply walk away, as his anchor remains tied to the basalt island. In reality, the warship itself is the true live anchor keeping them all here. The chain team keeps hacking away since nobody has ordered them to stop. The protagonist walks right past Doha and Kim Bora, heading straight to the seaward edge. Across 40 meters of open water, Hampio spots him, and his jaw instantly goes slack. Talk about an absolute nightmare. Hampio just realized this warship is his last remaining card. And that card is simply not enough. In a panic, he orders the second chain retracted. Leaving that heavy chain loose on the deck is incredibly dangerous to leave alone. The crew obeys instantly, since they are paid by the warship and not by Sachin. The protagonist watches silently, giving Hampio the chance to make his own final decision. Sure enough, Hampio makes the smart call and swings an axe to cut the chain. Since his boarding cleaver is still stuck deep in the coral reef, he has no choice. The heavy iron chain slips from the coral lip and splashes deep into the water. Free at last, the warship immediately rises half a meter off the deadly trap. That chain was all that held the keel. Hampio desperately roars to back the oars. The vessel backs away slowly, even as the reef's bone teeth scrape against its underside. The wood groans with every rising surf, but the ship manages to break away cleanly. Steering clear of the trap, Hampio turns the bow northwest toward his escape. The retreating warship limps away at half speed, taking on water from the heavy damage. On the reef, the stranded Korribound boarder looks back and forth at the protagonist. Our protagonist gives him a quiet, indirect choice: swim back now or stay. But if he wants his soul to follow, he cannot remain on this coral. Understanding the threat, the man dives in, and Hampio pulls him over the rail. Without looking back at the coral, the warship slowly fades into the northwest horizon. On the system panel, the red path alert from yesterday fades off the map. Threat cleared, the protagonist quietly closes the conquest interface. The coral hums softly as the mangrove roots settle into the seaward lip. They grow along the edge, where the defensive bone teeth were set last night. On the system panel, a glowing orange notification registers a brand new living defense. The coral teeth grow slightly longer, permanently merging with the defenses planted last night. Trait: the basin lid has stopped humming since the chain struck it once, and the lid decides that is enough chain for the morning. The system pings right beneath his sternum. Coral growth tick. Reef camp closes. Coral base opens in that coral base inherits the coral ring's freshwater basin, long pool drying racks, and a red shell edge. Gain mangrove knife fruit along the seaward lip, plus active coral teeth defense. It gains capacity for one additional structure, a bone sailboat. Construction slot is now available pending a blueprint. He reads the tick twice. The second time, the panel adds a small line at the bottom: captured bound survivors. Doha fighter, both are core bound under his flag at low rank until reassigned, daily. Upkeep is 4% per survivor at current scale. Combined with Hane, total daily upkeep is 23% off the top. Before doing anything, he looks at Doha. Doha is standing right where he was told to stand. Kim Bora has picked up the boarding cleaver. She sat down simply because she does not know what to do with her hands. Both of them are waiting because both of them know that the new anchor is the one telling them how to wait. He tells Doha indirectly that the broken raft on the dry side needs to be moved off the coral lip and broken down for driftwood, and that he can start with the broken raft because that is a job that does not require him to like him. He goes to the raft. He tells Kim Bora indirectly that the second drying rack needs a third tray and that the second tray on the first rack needs to be turned. She goes to the rack. Sway is watching the south pocket. Doha's foot is bleeding into the coral. The coral is taking the blood just as the basin took the chain. She tells him indirectly that the south pocket needs a new red shell pocket, given the first one has been spent, and that she can lay the new one inside the hour if he can pull 6 more shells from the inventory. He pulls the shells. She lays the pocket. 3 hours after sunrise, Warskiff 9 is 200 kilometers northwest, and the mangrove cutter is on the seabed under his south edge and park. Gant is a thin orange band along his coral lip. Doha and Kim Bora are his to feed. The Coral Devour core capacity panel reads at 56% under current upkeep. Because absorbing the mangrove knife island raised the cap, the first piece of good news the panel has given him this season. He sits down on the basin lid for the first time in 12 hours and eats a strip of dried blood crab meat off the second drying rack. The meat is honest. That basin lid is warm under him because His coral is warm under the lid. A second section opens on its own under his sternum unprompted. The archipelago chat scrolls. Warskiff 9 is returning to basalt. Docks hull damage at 38%. No Corebound losses. One free fighter injured. Park. Gant Mangrove Knife Island owner. Status erased. Mangrove Knife Island. Linked under an unranked coral owner. 2 Corebound survivors captured under his flag. Coral owner designation pending. The chat reacts the way a market reacts to a price that just moved. Mockery follows. 3 accounts drop off after the first 2 replies because 3 accounts have already noticed that an unranked coral does not normally absorb a subordinate owner's island. Speculation begins. 6 accounts guess what the coral actually is. Threats appear from 2 accounts, both from accounts that are in turn subordinate to Sajin. 1 account, a name he has not seen before, posts a single line asking how the absorption was done. Sajin himself does not post. He closes the chat panel and puts another strip of meat in. In his mouth, Doha splits raft planks against the coral lip, and Kimbora is turning trays on the drying rack, while Soya lays the new shell pocket along the south edge. The long pool is stocking up again, now that the silvers have come back to the gate. Since the war skiff is gone, the trait works. The bait gate is working. His coral teeth are growing into the mangrove knife as fingers slip into a glove. You do not rest after a victory, you spend it. So he opens the morning reef report selector for tomorrow. The default island scan slot is open again. That threat priority option is gone since the war skiff is gone. The half-range circle on the basic sea map has resolved into a clean pattern overnight. 3 pings show up ready for this. 1 is owned and steady. 1 is unowned and faint. The last is unowned and rated as a dungeon by that report's first pass tag, showing a silhouette of a closed ring of coral with the wrong color in the middle. He selects the dungeon silhouette and confirms. The panel acknowledges. Tomorrow's report will scan the dungeon. Tonight he sleeps 2 hours because 2 hours is all the math allows after a defense that long. Soya sleeps along the basin lid because the basin lid is warm. Doha sleeps on the broken raft planks, having chosen without being told that the broken raft is where his rank goes. Kimbora sleeps near the second drying rack with a boarding cleaver across her shins. The crab shell lid hums softly all night. He dreams briefly of a dock at low season, and then wakes up as the reef report is pinging. Morning reef report. Target 1 of 1. Dungeon reef silhouette. Name Hollow Spine Reef. Unowned. A closed ring of coral, roughly 400 meters across at the outer rim. Danger rating is mid. Best landing is the south-southwest gap where the outer ring breaks for 1 meter at low tide. Conquest condition. Link rather than absorb. Warning. The gap seals behind a raider on the inflow until the next outflow. Soya is awake at the basin already. Doha is back on the raft. Kimbora has the second tray going. The crab shell lid is humming. That bond reads 3 steady lines now. 1 Soya, 1 Doha, 1 Kimbora. The 3 lines breathing at 3 different rates, and all of them in some version of fine. He tells Soya he's going to Hollow Spine Reef solo because the report calls for 1 raider, not 3, and that she has the camp until he comes back with a bone hook rod and a half-built boat if the bond goes cold for longer. In a tide cycle, she should assume the dungeon tide closed wrong and read the panel, since the panel will tell her what the bond cannot. She tells him indirectly that the south pocket is settled, the basin lid is weighted, and the long pool is full, and that she does not need a speech because she has held a damaged island once already and a defended one once already, both with him on the seaward edge. Doha looks up from the raft planks once. Kimbora does not look up from the rack. He takes the shell raft, the bone teeth that did not make it into the seaward lip last night, the rusty knife with a bundled edge, 2 strips of dried blood crab meat, 1 square of cloth, the small fishing net, and the broken spear that has now bitten a mangrove blade and lived. Then he does not take the pearl hook fragment because the report says the chest will give him a real one. Hollow Spine Reef is 2 hours southwest under the shell raft. The raft has been retarded since yesterday, and the cracks are holding in the surf as he heads out. The long, lazy turn of the surf after a hard morning, a half-range circle on his basic system map closes behind him as he moves past the second ping. A new orange band along his coral edge flashes in the system panel right behind him. That southwest gap is exactly where the report said. It is only 1 meter wide at low tide with dark water inside the ring. The dungeon glows a deep green, black against the outer reef's dull gray. He pushes his shell raft through the Gap on the outflow, the gap seals up the very moment his raft clears it, the coral closes. No sudden snap, just the slow shut of a clam that has been waiting all morning. Now he is inside this quiet basin. Measuring about 300 meters across, shallows line the edges, but it deepens. The ring narrows to a single rib of dark coral, rising straight up like a finger. Bone eels glide along the inner ring in slow figure eights. 4 are visible, with even more hidden underwater. Hand-sized reef crawlers scuttle across the floor. Clusters, the air smells thick, like something has been dying down here. For a long time, without ever truly finishing, he baits his small fishing net with a fresh strip of blood crab meat, lowering it off his raft. A bone eel hits the net instantly, long, thin, and deadly. It is mostly teeth. But his sturdy net holds together nicely, because the bait was absolutely perfect and the beast was starving. He pulls the creature close against his raft, killing it with his weapon's bone teeth right in the soft notch behind its head, then pulls eel bones straight out of the body, like pulling bones from a saltfish at the market. 6 clean bones go into his bag. The beast's core, smaller than a thumbnail, comes out easily. It is the cleanest core harvest he has managed since the migration. He repeats this process 3 more times along the ring, because the intel promised plenty of bone eels, and he will not leave resources behind. The report was spot on. He has gathered 4 eel cores, 24 bones, and 2 sailed bales dragged from the seabed with his net, but his worn-down, broken weapon teeth have taken quite a beating. He rewraps them carefully right thereon the raft using a cloth square, tying it off tight with a sturdy vine. The new wrap holds. The central spine sits in the middle. A single chest waits at the base. He rows toward it in 12 clean strokes, noticing the water here is completely still. The raft glides smoothly, just like a boat in a sheltered harbor, while little reef crawlers scatter away. As the raft touches the stone, he sees the chest, sealed by coral and locked with a bone latch the size of his palm. This dungeon boss is supposed to be a massive bone eel lurking right here. In the report, the boss is inside the chest, but that latch, it is the boss. The chest itself is a lie. What sits there is a coiled monster, its head disguised with the rest of its massive body wrapped around the spine underwater. Its jaws are hinged at the bottom like a lid, and that latch is actually a deadly tooth. On a mission like this, you never try to force the container open. Instead, you feed the beast until it decides you are friendly, walking away with whatever treasure it spits out. He pulls a second piece of dried blood crab meat from his belt and carefully feeds it directly to the bone latch. The jaws instantly unhinge to swallow the offering. The giant eel head opens, uncoiling from the deep stone spine and rising out of the dark water in a massive, terrifying curve. It is wider than his raft, yawning wide enough to swallow the craft whole. Bait hits its mouth first, and without hesitation, the giant eel gulps it down. Instantly, he jams the broken spear bone deep into a soft notch inside its upper jaw. He aims right where the skin is thinnest, a weak spot the 4 eels told him about. Having found the mark, the beast suddenly goes limp, winding down into a single loose coil. The broken spear struck the perfect nerve. Quickly, he hooks a small fishing net beneath its lower jaw. He gives a hard yank. The lower jaw swings open, revealing the chest hidden inside the creature. The entire body splits open like a chest, revealing the hollow pathway leading straight down its throat. Nestled inside on a soft bed of glowing pearl sand lies a folded bone sailboat blueprint. Right beneath the blueprint, he spots a small ceramic jar marked with a system crafting symbol. His system panel quickly translates the recipe as specialized coral repair paste. It is the same paste Haran uses on monster wounds, except this is the actual recipe. Beneath the jar lie 3 perfectly clean, factory-finished bone hooks. They are flawless, requiring no extra filing. Underneath sits a single-tied fingertip-sized pearl. The initial scout report never mentioned this pearl, only noting the common pearl sand. He claims it all. The eel slumps down further into 2 coils as its body closes shut. Suddenly, the system pings. Hollow spine reef dungeon boss disabled. The refresh cycle has begun, leaving 4 tide cycles before the next boss respawn. Loot is secured and a territory link option appears. He immediately taps it. A closed ring of coral 400 meters wide is added to his basic sea map. It is marked under his flag as Hollow Spine Reef Dungeon with a gray band. A gap to the south-southwest opens, recognizing him as the new owner. This path will remain open for him. He rows his raft back through the gap. Behind him, the vibrant inner colors of the conquered dungeon fade into pitch black. But the outer reef holds strong. This is now the second island flying his flag. He claimed 2 islands in just 2 days, and this one will produce resources passively. Honestly, that massive passive yield is more shocking than the distant wars fading away. His reliable shell raft carries him safely back to his primary reef camp. The system officially recognizes this coral base as his camp for the morning. The new gray band on his map sits quietly at the edge of his range. He spots Sue standing guard on the seaward edge as he glides back in. Nearby, the 2 drying racks are already loaded with 3 trays each. Doha finished dismantling the broken raft and is stacking driftwood like a professional. Meanwhile, Kim Bora sits with a heavy boarding cleaver resting across her shins. She seems focused, carefully mending a small fishing net in her hands. After pulling his shell raft onto the dry sand, he places the bone sailboat blueprint down. He sets it on the basin lid so everyone can inspect the rare find. The system panel reacts instantly, unfolding the blueprint to reveal the schematic. The construction slot triggers as soon as he drops the 3 bone hooks inside. Crafting the rod is simple, but the actual boat is going to be a real challenge. The boat construction slot shows a material list, warning him he is short by 60%. It makes sense, considering the dungeon only rewarded him with the schematic itself. Next, the coral repair paste recipe is transferred to his inventory space. It registers under the medicine shelf slot, which remains grayed out for now. To unlock it, his coral base needs a dedicated herb trait. The herb trait is on an unscanned island, so he opens the morning reef report. He pulls up the selector again, the logical next move with 7 hours of daylight left. Having stayed awake for 30 out of the last 40 hours, he targets the faint, unknown silhouette. He marks it on the basic sea map for tomorrow's scan, that mystery shape. It's the only thing left unscanned within his immediate range, and the screen indicates that this silhouette is a herb island, but it has already started changing colors. It is taking on that sickly, ominous shade that reefs show just before they die. He wolfs down a 3rd strip of dried blood crab meat and sleeps for 4 hours. Under the basin lid, the absolute maximum time his calculated survival math allows. Waking up as the morning sun hits the lid, the reef report flashes before him. Target 1 of 1, located in the southwest quadrant. Green Spring Herbed Island. Current status shows it is owned by a moon heron. But the status is pending because the island core is already 15% fractured. From severe spore root contamination, while the owner is still alive, she is no longer the dominant voice on her own system panel. A spore-crowned toad is currently rooted at the spring head, sending secondary roots creeping toward the central herb terrace. The objective is clear: kill the toad and eliminate the roots before that core fracture reaches 60%. Below that, the system notes the owner has defended the spring for 2 tide cycles. Armed with just a knife and a sensor of herb smoke, right now she is barely conscious, weak, and definitely not looking for a savior from the conquest system. He prepares his gear. He has coral repair paste ready in his inventory now. Thanks to a dungeon recipe, using the basin lid as his workbench. An eel core is harvested from the hollow spine reef to create the perfect binder. Hacking 3 jars, he also grabs his bone hook rod and the broken spear. Fitted with freshly wrapped bone teeth, alongside a rusty knife and 2 crab strips. Loading up the cloth, a small net, and his trusty shell raft, he prepares to depart. He informs Soy that he is heading out, expecting the camp to hold down. The fort, just like yesterday, she silently signals back that the bait gate is locked and the south pocket is secure. She will defend the seaward edge with her own spear, having managed it twice before without needing any retraining. Doha and Kim Bora already know exactly what to do, no orders needed. Green Spring Herbed Island lies 3 hours southwest across the open water. The shell raft cuts through the waves smoothly as the sea map fades away. Now check this out: his connection back to the camp remains steady as the island finally appears. On the horizon, a thin ridge marred by a sickly streak along the high ground. It is a dull gray-green color, like a leaf losing its life before it drops. Those must be the secondary spore roots creeping up toward the main terrace. 2 full tide cycles of a single survivor fighting back with a knife. He beaches his raft on the sand, dragging it safely past the tide line. Right on cue, the monstrous spore-crowned toad waits on the central herb terrace. The creature is the size of a large dog, and the crown on its back is a ring of pale, bony fruiting bodies that twitch with every single breath. Gray-green spore roots crawl out from beneath the beast in 3 thick lines. He counts them manually, a crucial detail the system report completely left out. The first line runs straight to the spring head, while the second goes central. Terrace path, the third loops behind the giant toad, directly into a small herb patch. The beast has already devoured this patch. The spring head sits high up the slope. Right behind the terrace, a quiet woman stands clutching a sharp fisherman knife. In her left hand is a smoking herb censer, her pale face resembling old paper. Her hair is tied back with the same gray-green cloth visible all across the terrace. This means she has been cutting heavy spore roots here for a long time. Using the dead root cloth as a hair tie, she has not slept in 2 tide cycles. Conserving every scrap of fabric like any smart scavenger surviving on a long job. She spots him walking up the seaward sand and refuses to lower her weapon. Then she speaks to him across 40 meters of slope and thick herb smoke. An indirect channel, the system panel bridges 2 unbonded owners. She reveals she has been tracking his slow approach on her screen for an hour. Her interface labeled him an unranked coral owner with a fresh conquest history. He has a fresh conquest history and 1 open trade extraction queue slot. She spent the last hour deciding if that open slot is for her trait or her core. He tells her indirect back that the open slot is for whatever conquest allows. Whatever the conquest condition lets him claim is what fills the slot. The condition says he must clear the toad first, but she quickly warns him. That official conquest text is only written for the owner holding the upper hand. The system never shows it, what an owner with a fractured core thinks. Especially when an unranked coral owner with fresh victories walks up her slope. Carrying 3 jars of coral paste in his bag, he answers her immediately. He tells her those 3 jars are for the toad's spore wounds, not hers. The paste heals monster bites, not core fractures, and he has no cure for her. She would already know he cannot heal a core if she read his stats. A tense moment passes as the smoking censer in her hand stops drifting. The smoke freezes for a single second because she has stopped moving entirely. She warns him to clear the toad before she changes her mind about the knife. He prepares to face the massive beast, a spore-crowned toad with 3 roots. If cut in reverse order, the beast cannot move once the 3rd root is severed. That 3rd root is currently looped around the back of the dead herb patch. This dead patch is the only area where the spores find no nourishment. Having no fresh food there, he baits a small fishing net to lure it. Using a strip of dried blood crab meat, he hurls the net across. The 3rd root, desperately seeking food all morning, instantly reaches into the net. It rises directly out of the dead patch, and he immediately slices it. Severing it with his rusty knife causes the massive toad to violently spin. Losing its balance, the crown along its back begins twitching out of control. The 2nd root along the terrace tightens as the beast draws main power. Drawing from its feed line, he baits the net with the remaining meat. He throws the net right over the middle of the 2nd root. The root rises to bite the trap, and he swiftly cuts it down. The toad lets out a wet, heavy croak like a sack dropping hard. Finally, the 1st root connected to the spring head suddenly snaps taut. He moves the censer along the root path the moment it goes taut, and the herb. Smoke reacts with the root in a way his reports never specified, which is that the root actually flinches. He cuts the first path, leaving the toad defenseless. Itself, he thrusts his broken spear, wrapped in sharp bone teeth, deep into the toad's underbelly where the skin is thinnest. It is the exact weak spot his reports highlighted. As the critical zone, the beast cannot even finish its 2nd croak before the crown. Along its back goes completely still. Quick kills usually mean you might miss something. But this particular soft spot was something he had read about very carefully. In the dungeon guides and fighting 4-bone eels along the reef had trained his spear to strike with absolute precision. Suddenly, the system interface pings with a notification. The spore-crowned toad is defeated. All 3 spore roots are successfully severed. Primary contamination is cleared. However, the secondary spore crown remains active for 3 minutes unless destroyed. He immediately cuts the crown away using his rusty knife. It peels off cleanly because the monster's back is already dead. Suddenly, those twitching, bone-pale parts of the crown go straight into one of his 3 coral paste jars. The mixture binds the toxic spores exactly as the recipe. In his panel promised, once sealed, the twitching terrace garden finally falls quiet. The withered herb patch behind the dead toad slowly turns from gray to brown. and his panel now registers it as fertilizer-grade material after a quick purification. The mysterious woman nearby has lowered her weapon. She quietly informs him that her core is currently 57% fractured, and the conquest timer for her island will expire in 1 minute if they do not act immediately during this short time. She decided to offer her unique trait for his open trade extraction slot, pleading with him to bind her soul core before it shatters. Suddenly, the holographic system interface flickers to life before him. 3 choices appear. Destroy her core, absorb it, or bind it. The database warned that a player cannot survive core collapse, and her fracture rate is already 57%. He taps bind core. The system prompts for confirmation as this dangerous option will tie her life force directly to his. He confirms. Instantly, Munhar's core stops cracking at 57%, holding the severe damage in place. The cracks do not heal, but they seal tight, like pulling a damaged boat onto a dry dock. Her panel transfers the trait Q slot to him. The rare green spring herb soil settles directly into his active Q. Now, this entire offshore territory, including the herb terrace and the freshwater spring, links directly to his sovereign reef zone. Under his flag, highlighted in green, the system updates the new domain classification. Instantly, his newly secured coral base panel unlocks an active medicine shelf. And a healing herb patch, a poison cleaning basin, is now buildable. The coral repair paste recipe is now in active production. Best of all, his slave brand vulnerability drops by 12% thanks to the green spring herbed soil neutralizing those tracking inks. He had not even asked his system about the tracking marks. The panel simply detected the threat entirely on its own. The exhausted woman sinks to the ground, the intense binding having drained her remaining strength completely. Her sensor lies discarded on the dirty floor, and that dagger rests quietly on her lap. Her face is still pale like old parchment, but her breath steadies. It is the steady kind of breathing that shows the next breath will come naturally. He walks up the slope to the spring head, receiving her faint, indirect message. Speaking directly would take more breath than she has left. She explains that the spring stone she was guarding is the exact purifying stone mentioned in the report, sitting right under the spring head. She urges him to take it, explaining that this very stone is vital for purifying the spore root into high-grade fertilizer. It is absolutely not optional, because without it, the dead patch will start spreading dangerous spores again. Within a single tide cycle, he retrieves the stone, which is the size of his fist, and has the color of wet salt. He places it on the dead patch as the recipe panel directed. Almost instantly, the dull grayish-brown decay of the dead patch deepens into a healthy, clean brown. The purified spore root then flows directly into the coral network through the linked island connection. It feeds the reef as fertilizer right at the new herb patch. Heron sends another message that she has been holding the spring head for 58 hours and she desperately needs to rest. He sends a reassuring reply back through the bond, letting her know that their camp is 3 hours northeast under the shell raft, where the basin lid is warm. And Soy guards the seaward edge. Doha is busy gathering and breaking driftwood. Kimbora is turning the drying trays, and a brand new medicine shelf has just been unlocked. But they still need a healer to run it. Heron sends a weary reply, explaining through the bond that she will just sit on the raft, having no strength to swim. He gently helps her down onto the raft. As they row out, the bond between her and the coral begins to settle. Suddenly, the 3 existing lines on the bond expand into 4. This new line pulses with a slow, steady rhythm. Heron has fallen asleep halfway home. It is the deep, heavy sleep of someone who has guarded a spring head for 58 grueling hours with only a knife and sensor. At the base, they spot the raft approaching. Soy stands ready at the water's edge with her spear, alerted by the shifting bond that the incoming raft carries 2 passengers. Doha and Kimbora wait anxiously by the basin. The trays are turning and the massive crab shell lid hums with energy. The new medicine shelf sits under the dry side of the basin, an empty frame waiting for its healer. He beaches the raft on the sand. Soy glances once at the sleeping heron, then turns to him. The coldness in their bond drops by 2 degrees, not warm, but far better than the icy tension she held when Park Ji invaded the southern edge yesterday morning. Soy tells him through the bond that the medicine shelf requires the spring stone slotted into the lower frame and the herb seedlings planted along the upper frame. She strictly reminds him that she already knows how to set up a shelf. Heron sleeps peacefully on the basin lid for 6 hours. When she finally wakes, she sits up and eyes the newly assembled medicine shelf. she walks over on her own, ready to begin grinding the first batch of coral, paste into a potent antidote. Her hands move with the practiced ease of someone who has done this since the migration. As the first drop of antidote is prepared, the coral repair paste recipe automatically upgrades. On the panel, the formula was simply waiting for a true healer to complete it. The once empty medicine shelf is now fully active. He quickly sells 6 antidote drops. In the local island market that afternoon, 3 of them are bought by owners whose workers were bitten by deadly reef snakes along the busy southern trade lanes. They had been paying double to Shokin's lieutenants, but his new price is 20% lower, easily undercutting the greedy lieutenants. Lieutenants did not even invite Sojin to lower his own price today. The system processes every transaction within the hour, bringing in steady island coins. Profits are no longer modest. His coral panel ticks again at dusk. Both his healing herb patch and the poison cleaning basin are active. Flashing a larger, bolder warning, the panel alerts him of a vulnerability. He was searching for this last night. The brand is reduced by 24%. Tracking ink at the seaward lip fades by 1% with every tide. It takes 16 tides to completely dissolve the brand, accelerated by herbs. That brand was left behind by Hanpeo's heavy chain swing yesterday. He had not even bothered to check it since the chain hit the lid. But the panel noticed anyway. Honest work always fixes what you actually need. One solution naturally solves the next problem. Soy and Harin rest together now. They sit on the basin lid while he finishes writing in the ledger. Nearby, Doha sits on driftwood. Kimbora finishes mending the small fishing net. Moving to the second drying rack, Kimbora watches the 4 bond lines. 4 breathing rates and 4 anchors. The newest one belongs to Harin. Her breathing pattern matches Soy's, like 2 strangers trying to read each other. His own coral core remains stable throughout the quiet evening as dusk approaches. Darkness slowly rolls over the reef edge. Tomorrow's reef report menu is open. It floats directly before him, but he has not made a choice yet. 2 new pings appeared since morning, one faint and unowned to the east. A steady yellow signal also blinks to the northwest. It belongs to an independent owner, not a Sejin subordinate. He reaches out. He grabs a piece of dried meat and selects the eastward unknown signal. Suddenly, the panel flashes with an unexpected, sharp warning alert on its own. It is the kind of alert he has learned to fear. The regional chat opens. A new bounty is posted under a basalt flag by Mashyok Jin. Offering a massive sum of island coins, this powerful owner posts a public bounty. This staggering amount instantly freezes the chat as everyone stops to read. It is not targeting his coral core. Instead, they are buying information. Proof must be submitted directly through a verified market channel. They want to know how the unranked Southwest owner absorbs other cores. Anyone with details will receive the massive reward within the current tide cycle. Submissions are open to survivors, captains, and owners alike. Even basic chat handles can submit. Complete anonymity is guaranteed. That massive bounty number sits right at the bottom of the post. No one is laughing now. The entire chat goes completely silent. It is the tense stillness of a market when an unmatched bid lands. Within seconds, 3 different accounts post brief, one-line replies. The first asks if even a lieutenant inside Sojin's ranks can apply. A familiar handle writes the third reply, one he saw yesterday. It is the very same user who asked about the absorption yesterday. Now they post a single chilling line directly underneath the bounty. They reveal the unranked owner holds 3 survivors, 1 fisher and 2 fighters. They claim the binding on the fisher was forced right at her limit. His own core was at the cracking point, and the binding on the fighters was done simply by capturing tags from a subordinate owner's island after that. Subordinate's island was absorbed, and that the absorption itself was done through the standard conquest interface, choosing to absorb instead of binding, and that the handle had been watching the southwest quadrant for 2 days through standard market channels and was willing to trade, the handle writes. To submit a more detailed description of the absorption pattern for the listed bounty, if the basalt flag would clarify if one description was enough, or if sequential descriptions could be built separately, the handle goes by Lim Di-hyun. The basalt flag replies in an instant, yes, sequential descriptions can be built separately. The basalt flag writes, the first submission is accepted under public terms with the bounty paid upon verification. Lim Di-hyun replies in a single line that the first submission will be delivered through Verified market channels within the next tide cycle. The chat panel goes quiet as they watch a market trade close on the absorption pattern of his coral. This means an unknown chat handle has been closely watching his last 2 days to write a report on them, meaning whatever information Lim Di-hyun submits during the next tide cycle is going to be accurate enough that Sajin's next move will be built on it. He reads the bounty number. Then he reads Lim Di-hyun's first reply once and the basalt flags. Confirmation that sequential descriptions can be built separately. Market that just opened a sequential price on the secret of his work gives him until the next tide cycle to change that secret, so he looks at him across the basin lid. Huron is by the medicine shelf, hands frozen, an antidote drop suspended above the jar she was about to seal. Doha holds a plank he is about to add to the pile, motionless. Kimbora holds the drying rack tray mid. Turn 4 anchors, 4 breathing rates, all breathing together. For the first time since he bound them, the tide turns over the reef edge in the absolute silence that the chat just created. The next tide change is in 5 hours and 47 minutes, and a chat handle named Lim Di-hyun, who has been watching his coral through standard market channels for 2 days, is about to deliver the first sequential description of his absorption, pattern to Masak Jin's flag. During it, 5 hours and 47 minutes is a countdown not to be wasted. He does not waste a single second of this countdown staring at the chat panel. The bounty post closes first under his hand, below the closed window. The chat keeps moving, just like a market does behind a counter left unattended. But the panel beneath his chest displays the exact numbers he actually needs, and those numbers are the 4 anchors at the basin lid, along with the report selector at his left and the trade extraction queue at his right. Soy steps in from the seaward edge with her spear raised, not lowered. Huron sets the antidote drop into the jar without spilling a drop. Doha places the plank onto the pile carefully so it does not shift. Kimbora finishes turning her tray and rests her hand on the rack edge. 4 anchors at the basin lid, their 4 breathing rates settling into one steady pace, all looking at him. Va had already revealed to them, before he could speak, what the chat panel had just displayed. He sits at the table, quietly telling Soy that they will not be sleeping tonight. She answers that she never planned on sleeping anyway. Lim Dae-hyun is making his move, and his upcoming report will be highly accurate. Why? Because 2 days of watching is 2 days of watching. The solution isn't to disprove his observations. His plan is to change the actual pattern. He opens the Devour core. It reads exactly the same. Since Park Ji went in, Ji is set to absorb. Bind is active on Soy. And Harin, Doha, and Kimbora are tagged. The current pattern matches exactly what Di-hyun has been tracking. Owners are cracking at their limits. The bind option triggers during a crack, and absorption activates when an owner becomes too dangerous to spare. Tags are secured during that absorption phase. 4 lines. 3 survivors, 1 absorption. He taps the sub-options. For the Devour core, it is an untouched interface, the sub-options expand beneath the main 4 commands: absorb, link, extract, and dissolve. Under absorption, a hidden line appears, one he never noticed before. The absorb sequence is set to default. This is the exact sequence Di-hyun has been watching. 4 subsequences are labeled A through D. Each one reorders how the interface presents options when an owner falls. Sequence A is default, bind first, then absorb. Subordinate tags are captured in a 5-second window. Sequence B reverses this, absorbing first and binding second with a brief 3-second tag capture window. Below that, sequence C divides the process into 2 stages, first dissolving the core into raw coral material, then extracting the targeted trade directly from the material instead of the core. Finally, sequence D binds the defeated owner first, then initiates a full absorption on their island rather than their core, keeping the core bound while absorbing the land as territory. The system labels this as bind plus island absorb. That last option reads like a specialized knot he has not ever tied before, laid flat across a wooden dock. He has never seen another owner do this, simply because most lack a coral with an active Devour core. Even those who possess one rarely have an active trade extraction queue open. The screen had simply been waiting for his decision. He finally taps sequence D. The default sequence is now completely overwritten and deactivated. Coral energy costs will rise 15% as both binds run simultaneously. But get this, the very pattern Di-hyun is trying to sell. To Xiao Jin in 5 hours is no longer the event that will unfold when the next enemy crosses his coral reef. He closes the menu, 5 hours 40 minutes remain according to the timer in his chest. The morning report remains active on his left. A radar display shows 2 earlier pings, along with a third signal that arrived within the exact window the bounty closed. That incoming target is moving northeast straight toward his territory. Its yellow color marks an independent player, not a Xiao Jin subordinate. The beacon flashes intensely, indicating they are moving on a raid anchor. He selects the flashing warning. The scan cost is exceptionally high today, because the panel knows they are charging on a raid anchor, draining his energy. 2 more percentage points climb. His panel pings in under 90 seconds. Owner O. Yasol trait Iron Palm Beach. Her status is independent but desperate. Danger high in close combat. Resources Iron Palm Wood Spear Stone Training. Posts Conquest condition. Defeat the owner in her challenge or break her. Command post warning. She attacks smaller owners before slave docks can take them. Landing in 4 hours 11 minutes. The raid party is 6 fighters plus the owner. They vector northeast with a shell raft escort and a command raft of the same hardwood. The report closes. 4 hours 11 minutes is sooner than 5 hours 40 minutes, meaning the next person coming over his coral lip will arrive before. She comes over before Lim Dune's first submission lands at Xiao Jin's flag. If the next intruder comes over the lip and goes down by sequence D, the pattern D Hyan's submission becomes a pattern of his last conquest, not his next one. D Hyan will realize he is dealing with an opponent who builds sequentially, because he knows a second submission is worth much more than the first. That is a temporary bandage, not a fix. The real fix is making that second submission incorrect by the time he writes it. He taps his Coral Devour core panel again, dropping back into the absorb sequence and selecting sequence D, so the system registers it as a variable sequence. His panel calls it a hidden option he had overlooked, because that option only unlocks once another sequence is active, and a second conquest is on the horizon. It runs a different subsequence for each battle, drawing from B, C, and D in rotation. Default A stays out because default A is the exact pattern D Hyan is currently selling, variable sequence. Confirmed, energy cost is an extra 8% per conquest on top of the chosen subsequence's base cost, higher than he wants, but cheaper than having a rival flag leak his methods. He closes the panel, so he stands at his elbow, drawn by their bond since he remained inside his panel longer than usual. Haran stands by the medicine shelf, cooling the second batch of antidote drops. Doha guards the seaward edge now, while Kim Bora arranges the tray of dried minnows exactly as Soy instructed her an hour ago. He tells Soy that an independent warrior named O Yasal lands in 4 hours 11 minutes with 6 fighters on a heavy command raft coming in on a raid anchor. This means her command post is aboard the raft, not her island, making the conquest conditions simple: destroy that post rather than invade her island. Report profiles Yasal as someone who preys on smaller owners before slave docks can capture them, meaning she will strike his coral fast to keep her only advantage. So calmly tells him that she will hold the seaward edge herself and that Haran must stay at the medicine shelf while Doha and Kim Bora pre-stage red shell traps below the tide line on the northeast lip. That is where Yasal's raid anchor will drop. She adds that they should leave the bait gate open and move the silver shoal to the northeast pool because fish blood in the surf splits a 6-fighter team faster than coral teeth. He tells her she is absolutely right, and to execute the plan, Soy acts instantly. Doha and Kim Bora head to the northeast lip, armed with crab shells and red shell traps. Haran sets the numbing paste on a small tray and brings it to. He preps the medicine shelf, stacking 2 jars of antidote next to it. A numb arm and a poison wound are completely different things. Soy opens the gate. She herds the silver fish toward the northeast pool with her bare hands. It is exactly how a silverfish keeper acts when she is fully focused on her trait, watching it like others watch the weather. He drags the broken raft from the dry side back to the northeast lip as a footboard. A trap for the wrong woman. 3 hours 55 minutes left. He drinks. This is the water he forces down even when he is not thirsty, knowing what is ahead. There will not be another drop for 4 hours. Harin watches him. She brings over a strip of dried blood crab meat. He accepts silently. Chewing slowly, he gives the bone teeth along the edge one last check. 3 hours 26 minutes remain. The system chat panel suddenly pings with a new alert. A private whisper from Lim Dayan. Dahyun's message is brief. He writes that he has already mapped out the master's absorption pattern. He is delivering those precise details to the basalt flag this tide cycle. He also notes that the coral has just expended energy on a subsequent shift. This change happened within the last 20 minutes, leaving a very clear trace. It is fully visible on his end because standard market feeds track coral energy. Dahyun adds that this shift won't impact his first trade submission. However, it will definitely alter the second one, creating a massive issue. Still, he is totally willing to hold back that second report. He wants a counteroffer the coral owner can post through that channel. He closes the window without a single reply. A man selling secrets like this is someone who is already looking for his next deal, not protecting the current one. That is not someone you trust. 2 hours 48 minutes, Soy prepares on the edge. She stands on the seaward edge with both spears now. The longer rests on her shoulder. The shorter weapon lies ready by her boot. It is a thrower's stance. Anyone trained on a fishing boat knows exactly how to handle 2 spears. Heron has already rolled the heavy medicine shelf beneath the basin dry overhang. He weights it down with 2 heavy stones. Doha finishes setting the red shell traps. These run below the tide line. Kimbora stands guard at the bait gate. He holds a wooden ladle filled with old fish blood. He patrols the coral. Sharp bone teeth, double-layered traps, 3 pockets, and that broken wooden raft. It is pinned at the northeast, ready to act as a footboard. Fresh mangrove knife fruit runs along the seaward edge in a green line. The system panel lists it as active. Still, no anchor spikes yet. That is because the Shellback Bastion blueprint is locked on a monster island. He will deal with that problem later. 2 hours 11 minutes left. A strange iron palm raft rises on the northeast horizon in the pale dawn. The heavy vessel rides much lower in the water than a drift raft. Iron palmwood has serious weight. 6 dangerous fighters shift across the deck. They move with the seasoned precision of soldiers trained to fight on a raft, not land. Oyasu is the 7th standing right at the front, holding a massive spear. That weapon looks anything but ordinary, standing beside a smaller hardwood post. The system panel beneath his chest reads the weapon as it draws near. He scans the range as her command post, telling Soy that her command station is the iron palm post at the raft's stern. Soy tells him in return that she will hurl her second spear at that post first if the conquest panel demands it. He signals back, confirming that the conquest panel is indeed demanding it. She nods once. It has been 1 hour and 28 minutes, but the clock has stopped. Mattering now, the raft has entered the zone where the coral teeth start. Humming right under his sternum, Yassel calls across the water, her voice low. It is the weary shout of a leader on her 3rd week of a raiding campaign. Carefully conserving every last bit of her breath for the brutal fight ahead, she tells him as he reads her signal that she has been moving toward the southwest quadrant for 2 days because the slave dock fleet's route crosses his coral reef within the next tide cycle. She would rather claim a coral reef that is about to be branded by Sachin than let a reef bound to 2 female owners be branded by Sachin without doing anything. Soy, standing on the seaward edge, hears the call. Her grip on her longer spear remains completely steady. Yassel calls out again, stating she does not want a duel or some tedious market negotiation, making it crystal clear that she wants the coral and its traits she has calculated her iron palm beach's chances against the incoming slave dock fleet, and the calculations prove her beach loses unless they have a devour core beneath it. He yells back across the water that her math. Reading the bond aloud through his panel, he adds that his own Quarrel has been carrying 4 heavy anchors for 2 days, and the load has not gotten any lighter. He's not handing this burden to a warrior who only calculates safety from the back of her heavy command raft. Yassel does not call back. Again, her raft swings around the seaward edge the way a heavy iron palm raft turns when its owner has decided the talking is done. Her raft lands on the northeast lip, which is the only landing point and anchor on her Vector can take. Iron palm wood slams into the broken raft he pinned there. 2 of her fighters leap onto that broken raft, since 2 vanguard warriors always step off first on a landing. The ruined raft snaps both fine knots the moment the second fighter steps on the second plank. Both warriors tumble right over the side. and plunge onto the bone-tooth line, which instantly catches the first across the shin and the second across the calf. Neither of them falls completely down to the ground. Since Yassel's warriors are trained to keep their feet on a hit, yet neither of them is advancing up the reef the way a raiding warrior is supposed to climb. The lip Yassel does not even glance at her fallen men. She steps off the raft, herself directly onto the ledge, skipping the shattered raft she had just watched fail. The wreckage fall, her remaining 4 fighters fan out the way a 6 warrior. Team splits when 2 are down, 2 head to the north pocket and 2 go. To the south, both pockets are filled with red shell traps. The north pocket trap snaps shut, catching the first warrior's ankle. A south pocket trap quickly claims the third across the heel. Fortunately, the 4th fighter pays attention, stepping clean around the danger zone and onto the bone-tooth line. Already, 3 of her 6 warriors are wounded within the first 30 seconds of landing. Over at the bait gate, Kim Bora ladles the first pail of fish blood into the northeast surf, and the silver shaw under Soy's trait senses the blood and dives deep into the crashing surf. A silver fish shaw turns instantly whenever its master calls. Wounded warriors on the bone-tooth line stay clear of the water. Blood draws smaller predators right up against the surf line. 2 fighters wait. They watch the north and south pockets. One of them is done waiting. He tumbles backward over the lip, landing hard on the bone-tooth line as the silver shaw drives smaller predators right up against his ankles. 4 of her 6 fighters are knocked out of the line within the first minute. Issel is still moving. She fights exactly like the reports described. Fast and at close range, spear forward, low stance, not a single wasted step. She surges up the lip past Doha since he was positioned south, and her vector is north. She sweeps around the bone-tooth line, having watched it claim her allies. Soy throws her second spear. It is a perfect throw, a throw from a fisher. She has spent her life on a fishing skip. She knows exactly how. Spear flies over wet wood. Her weapon strikes the iron palm command post. Low on the front face, the ancient hardwood absorbs the blow and holds it without breaking. A conquest panel under his sternum pings, registering the strike as an attack on the post. Soy immediately unleashes her longer spear next. It strikes the exact same low front face, just 2 finger widths above the first. The wood holds this one too, but his panel flags the structure as compromised. Yasu steps onto the dry side of his coral, having witnessed both of Soy's throws. She charges. Suddenly, Aaron rushes out from the medicine shelf holding a tray of numbing paste. She is no warrior and she does not pretend to be. She flings the tray forward, striking Yasu's spear shaft just 3 finger widths from Yul's grip. Numbing paste smears across the weapon and onto 2 of her fingers. Yul refuses to drop it, but her grip slips because the numbing paste is doing its work. Watch closely, that slight slip is all Soy needs. She closes the gap, grabbing the shorter spear from the lip. He stands ready behind Yul, blocking her path to the command post. Suddenly, the conquest interface flashes under his sternum. His system analyzes the field and prompts him with the standard prompt, displaying a single clean line for his victory condition. Destroy the command post or defeat the owner. The system marks the target as vulnerable and within the winning window. 1 more solid hit on the post will end this, but here is the twist. He chooses a different path. He hooks Yasu's spear with some vine rope he had strategically hidden here earlier. The rope snags the sticky shaft. Yasu's grip fails completely under the pastes. Paralyzing effect, her spear flies off target by a critical hand width, giving Soy the exact opening she needs to drive her shorter spear into. A coral root snare grown overnight on the dry side by the mangrove knife. Yu stumbles directly into the snare, spear in hand. Instantly, the mangrove root snaps shut exactly as the system designed it. It is not tight enough to shatter her leg, but firm enough to paralyze her movement. Yu does not scream. She quietly tells him her command post is a single hit away. She refuses to give him the satisfaction of showing her fear. He has no intention of giving her that pleasure either. Soy calmly walks past Yul with her spear resting on her shoulder, heading for the command. He plants the shorter spear firmly into the post along that same low front face. The first 2 spears slam home, cracking the wood wide open. The conquest panel pings. Her command raft drifts back by just a hair, all because the raid anchor's command post is what keeps her raft locked to the outer lip. The command post breaks, conquest conditions met, and the system opens a new layer of options deep within his chest. Yassel's core is fracturing, but not completely shattered yet. Hers is stable at 68%, holding strong. That is exactly the kind of stress a real warrior handles, always pushing their cores right to the limit. Break, absorb, or bind the core. He configures his unique devouring coral core to run a variable sequence, and the selection panel automatically activates. Sequence D opens up, offering a bind and absorb combination. He taps bind first. The interface confirms it. Yasel's fracture stabilizes at 68%, just like Haren's did. Her cracks seal up, vanishing the way a water disturbance settles once it's calm. Next, a second window blinks open on the interface, prompting an island absorption. The system demands confirmation, eating an island while the owner is bound. It's a ruthless option, and it is something most ordinary owners would never even attempt. After all, they do not possess a Devour core with an active extraction queue. Running beneath it, he hits confirm, and the Iron Palm Beach absorption begins. The trait transfers immediately, 68 kilometers to the northeast, Yasel's actual island. Starts to shudder, her prized iron palm groves, the valuable spearstone quarry in the training grounds, dissolve completely into raw coral material. It is just like what happened to Park Gunt's mangroves. System notifications begin flooding in. He acquires 3,000 kilograms of iron palmwood and 600 kilograms of spearstone. 12 intact training posts slot next to Soy's silver fish shoal and Haren's green soil. On his screen, the coral base ticks. Fresh iron palm posts sprout along the dry side of his reef, taking up 12 distinct positions, sturdy spear racks. Rise next, constructed automatically as the system processes all that freshly acquired spearstone. It crafts everything according to Yasel's blueprint. A reinforced landing beach forms along the northeastern lip, right where the enemy raft was smashed. The bone tooth line remains, the mangrove root snare holds, and the defensive coral teeth are doubled. A fresh layer of iron palm beach sand spreads beneath the trap. His coral base is officially registered as base tier, requiring just one more high-grade island trade. To achieve a full fortress upgrade, the extraction queue closes one active slot, with only one left open. Meanwhile, Yasel is still trapped in the snare. Since the sequence does not release targets automatically, he issues a silent command through his coral interface to let her go. The thick mangrove roots part, and Yasel steps out onto the sand. She leaves her spear behind, her voice completely flat and devoid of emotion. She points out that her home is gone, she is bound. And she will not apologize for attempting to raid him. It was simply the most logical, strategic choice based on the data she had. He responds calmly, stating that he never expected her to apologize anyway. Her calculation was merely that of a traditional warrior who failed to factor in his unique Devour core. The new reality they are dealing with now is a massive reef that just consumed her entire beach. Now her only option is to take charge of their new defenses. Yasel stares back in total silence for a long, heavy moment. Finally, she breaks the quiet to deliver her answer. Kimbora promises to train the defense, noting her 4 active fighters are bound under her tags. Her 2 wounded warriors are also bound under her tags, and she makes one thing very clear. She wants those injured treated immediately, because that is what a real leader does for her people. Even if she is no longer officially in charge, he quietly points her toward the medicine shelf. Haren is already working. Haren steps up to the bone tooth line with a numbing paste tray. He also carries fresh antidote drops, tending to the 2 injured fighters lying flat on their backs. Nearby, 2 other wounded soldiers sit up within the rocky pockets of the coral reef. Haren focuses on her work, ignoring everyone while telling the injured to hold absolutely still. She warns them not to pull the embedded shells out of their bleeding wounds just yet. Those shells are actually helping his system panel process the healing until the paste is applied. With the treatment started, 6 new bonds flow directly into the coral. How do they rank? They are low rank with minimal draw, but they are fresh power sources, 10 anchors total. 4 are core-bound and 6 are low rank. The bond hum in his chest grows stronger. It is much louder than at sunrise. Yu warns him that a major upgrade is coming. He will need a fortress trigger within the next tide cycle because Sajin's massive fleet is moving. This is not some minor raid skiff, but the actual main fleet with chained warships. They carry branding hooks, heavy slave collars, and devastating monster bone rams along their current route. This terrifying force will cross his territory within 3 tide cycles, and his defenses cannot survive it. Suddenly, his chat panel pings with a private message from a dealer named Lim Di-hyun. Lim Di-hyun writes that he has taken note of the recent conquest over Oy Su. It was a non-default victory, prompting the dealer to update his second official submission. He is adjusting his reports accordingly, while also sending along some highly critical intelligence. He warns that the slave dock fleet has advanced one full tide cycle ahead of schedule. The enemy warships are now expected at his coral within 2 tide cycles, not 3. This sudden rush is typical behavior for their ruthless commander, Masak Jin, when hunting bounties. He loves to strike fast, ensuring he lands before any warning can reach his targets. The protagonist closes the notification. Yul is standing nearby, closely watching his reaction. She warns him that she recognizes the informant, Lim Di-hyun, from her market days. He is known as a shady trader who routinely sells the exact same intel twice. He pocket deals to both opposing sides, meaning he should not trust those alerts too easily. The informant designs them to cause panic. He replies that he only reads them once. After looking them over, he quickly deletes them. Still, she insists that is dangerous. Reading his lies even once is a mistake, though she will not press the issue. Meanwhile, Sui returns to the seaward edge, holding a shorter spear in her hand. She grips her primary long spear, which Doha successfully salvaged from the ruined command outpost. At the defensive line, Harin is wrapping up the final bandage on the 6 wounded. Doha works on dragging their captured command raft onto the dry shore for processing. That dense hardwood raft provides 1,200 kilograms of incredibly valuable material. Kim Bora departs. She heads back to the second drying rack, meticulously flipping over the food trays. She is the disciplined type who always finishes her current task before doing anything else. So the roster stands at 10 anchors, 4 Corabound, and 6 low-rank survivors. Their coral base remains at the starting tier, awaiting that crucial fortress upgrade. The clock is ticking. This next wave is going to test him to his absolute limit. Deep within his system menu, the selection for tomorrow morning's reef report is open. A glowing radar circle highlights that mysterious, unowned eastward signal he has been tracking. These are the targets he plans to take, along with a new option his panel just surfaced. He knows this deep scan cost is the only fortress tier option available to him. 2 tide cycles, that new ping indicates a north mid-range monster island. It is fortress grade, labeled as Shellback Bastion Island, an unowned high-danger zone. A high-grade coral wall blueprint is listed, plus a hidden chest under. Golem Nest, a warning states the boss wakes if all shield crabs die. That costs 600 coins, 12% energy, and 2 trays of dried blood crab. He has all 3. Before tapping the selector, he tells Yasu indirectly that her first job is to walk the coral and decide where the iron palm posts go up. First, which of the 6 low ranks she trusts on the seaward bench at sunrise, and how she plans to train defenses within a single tide cycle. Yasu answers indirectly. Promising she will walk the perimeter, he taps the selector and the panel confirms the deep scan target of Shellback Bastion with a report ready in 3 hours. His coral energy instantly drops by 12% and the 2 trays of dried blood crab vanish from his panel into the deep scan ledger, 600 island coins. Transfer out of his market account and into the system intel ledger, his coral devour. Under maintenance, core capacity is 22%. Talk about a massive gamble. Lowest since his coral grew past the platform, he closes the screen, sunrise. Touches the seaward edge like a pale line across the surf. Soy on the edge has not turned. The shoal from her trait moves in lazy figure, 8's inside the bait gate because the silver shoal does that when its owner finally lowers her shoulders after 12 long hours. Harin has finished applying the last of the wound dressings, walking back to her medicine shelf with her hands still sticky. Doha has the captured raft hauled onto the dry side and is starting to dismantle it with a rusty knife. Kim Bora has the second drying rack 2 trays ahead of its midnight status. Yasu has started walking the coral. She walks the land like a warrior patrolling a new beach. Her boots stop right at the bone-tooth line as she studies it, near the mangrove root. Snare, she pauses again to test its strength with her hand. 3 steps later, she walks over to the iron palm posts growing along the dry side, laying her hand on the first one. She reads it like an owner inspecting her own displaced territory. The post does not change color under her hand. Still, her connection shifts. It loses its sharper edges, not warmth yet, not even close, just a start. A minor shift. The chat panel scrolls under his window, that bounty still pinned. Still pinned at the very top. Dihun's first submission has not landed yet. Basalt flag has not appeared again. Below the bounty thread, an anonymous user is wondering aloud where Lim Di-hun gets his incredibly accurate tide cycle forecasts, since they run half a cycle ahead of any public market reader. They read like a system panel belonging to an owner sitting above a trench rather than an island with 2 tide cycles left by the system's count. Soy turns her head toward him for the first time since sunrise. She tells him indirectly that the deep scan target will require a full raid party and offers to guard the seaward edge while he is gone, suggesting Yasu take full charge of the dry side as defense leader. She adds that Harin must keep the medicine shelf running, while Doha and Kim Bora stay clear of the seaward edge. Time is tight as Soji's fleet is now less than 2 tide cycles away. Yassel, who has walked back to Soy, quietly lets her know she understands her new assignment. She is taking full charge of the defense, holding down the dry side. The two hardly look at each other, but his bond senses their shared anxiety. He informs them that the deep scan results arrive tomorrow at sunrise. He will be heading straight to the bastion that very morning. 3 hours later, the scan is ready, flashing directly in his mind at sunrise. Shellback Bastion Island is unclaimed, danger level high, monster list loaded. Shellback boars roam in 3 groups of 4, shield crabs guard the tide pools along the southern shelf, with a stone barnacle golem nesting at the center. Plates of hard shell and stone coral fortress moss are up for grabs. He spots blueprints for a coral wall and a bastion anchor spike. A hidden chest lies under the golem nest, accessible via a southwest tide crack. But there is a catch: the boss wakes if every shield crab dies. Best landing spot is 20 meters from the crack, estimated clear time 6 hours. That is only if he avoids slaughtering all the shield crabs. Second, much darker warning flashes at the bottom: other hostiles are near. 2 unauthorized raid parties have already landed on Shellback Bastion Island. Bounty hunters are closing in from the southeast, arriving within 6 hours. Sopchin's high bounty has already drawn bloodthirsty hunters right onto his path. 2 rival crews have entered the zone, but he does not back down. He will let these intruders think they are in control while he slips past. He plans to clear the island right under their noses. He tells Soy that he is taking the shell raft and the unfinished bone sailboat rig, promising to return within 7 hours with a fortress trait or not at all. Soy quietly reminds him that he has no room for failure. The bone sailboat is barely a skeleton, frame laid, sail weed cured, bone hooks ready. But it completely lacks any deck planking. Still, he decides to take this raw frame. It floats, and it is far quicker than the raft. The shell raft is just his backup, essential for a solo, high-risk run. A second hull is vital. He departs from his coral sanctuary at sunrise. Yassel watches from the dry side, the iron palm post towering behind her, flanked by her 4 remaining veterans and 2 barely recovered fighters who can stand. She refuses to meet his gaze as he pushes off into the waves. Instead, she scans the horizon, vigilant as any true beach defender would be. Nearby, Soy stands at the water's edge, gripping a short spear in one hand, and Yassel's newly recovered weapon in the other. Meanwhile, Harin at the medical station is already prepping supplies, knowing his status panel predicts heavy injuries. He is going to need them. The voyage to Shellback Bastion Island takes 3 grueling hours, but the unfinished bone frame glides surprisingly well. It is not incredibly fast, but it easily outpaces the clunky shell raft. He rows hard through the second hour as the runner hooks snag the surf. While this dragging slows him down, it keeps his vessel perfectly on course. Finally, the southwest face of Shellback Bastion Island rises from the mist. Right on schedule as the second hour of sunrise begins, the island is. It is far larger than the deep scan report had implied. Stone coral mounds rise in 3 rings around a massive central mound. That central point is shielded by a hardened reef. Shell layer, as the report mentioned, tide pools along the southern shelf are clearly visible from the water. Shield crabs inside those pools move in slow, lazy circles, the way they behave when they have been the sole creatures on an island for so long that absolutely nothing has bothered them. He lands at the southwest face 20 meters from the tide crack. Spotting the marked coordinates, he ties his shell raft to a stone coral mound on the lip. Leaving his bone sail frame, he beaches his boat right next to it, driving a rusty knife into the sand. This place is called Shellback Bastion, and its sand is a slightly different shade of brown than the sand back on his home coral. That rusty blade is his only reliable beacon. He grabs the stone-tipped spear that Yasu had laid out for him back at the training post. This spear is heavier than his old driftwood one, but a true fisher knows how to read that weight. In a single throw, next, he prepares the bone hook rod with its silver minnow line wound tight. He packs some crab shell bait and a coil of vine rope. Nobody else comes with him on this run, not Soy, nor Heron, nor Yassel, nor any of the low ranks. The mission demands absolute precision, which means keeping a low profile. 6 people stomping around a tide pool together would ruin everything. The first ring of stone mounds must be crossed carefully. He walks along the lip instead of crossing the mounds because the lip is completely free of shield crabs, and those crabs do not chase, they sit and hold. He has zero interest in waking them. The southern shelf is exactly where expected. Now, it is time to fish for the shield crabs. This is the exact plan outlined in the report, and it works like a charm. The bone hook rod with the silver minnow line is perfect for these medium-sized pools. He baits the hook with a sharp piece of crab shell. Shield crabs might be slow, but they are not stupid. Finally, one takes the bait because it is far larger than anything it has ever seen before. He pulls. The shield crab is yanked clean out of the pool. It moves awkwardly, having never been dragged out of its quiet home like this. He lands it on the lip. He pries one shell plate off its back. It pops off easily because shield crab shells are layered exactly as described in the intelligence files. He repeats this 6 times. 6 shell plates are plenty for what he needs to unlock next. He leaves the rest alone, because the report warns that the boss wakes if every shield crab dies. 6 is a safe number. He advances to the central mound. The hardened reef shell layer covering it is far thicker than he likes. Fortunately, a tide crack on the southwest face offers the entry point he needs. The opening is narrow, but a man of his build can squeeze through if he moves slowly and sideways. Squeezing in carefully, he slips inside. The chest is hidden deep within the mound, directly beneath a sleeping golem nest, high above him. A massive stone barnacle golem guards the surface. Separating him from his goal is 3 meters of dark crawl space. His bone sail frame and rusty knife are 50 meters behind him, still visible through the narrow crack. Steeling himself, he begins to crawl. The golem directly above the nest remains perfectly still, according to the deep scan. The beast only awakens if every shield crab dies, taking 6 out of many. Keeps them alive. The chest sits exactly where the report promised. Hardwood banded with old bronze. The lid lies unlocked because a chest hidden beneath stone. The golem nest needs no locks. He pries it open, finding a coral wall bastion. Blueprint on top, a single sheet of sealed waxed paper, an anchor spike recipe. Lies underneath, also waxed. Beneath both are 6 small pearls and a coil of fortress moss thread. He grabs it all and crawls back through the narrow crack he first used, but the sound waiting outside is not his own. 2 boats are quietly closing in on the southeast face of the rock. Both are shell rafts carrying 6 men, stone-tipped spears held ready. These are coral hunters, small-time scavengers, who would chase a basalt flag bounty within minutes. They have not spotted him yet, blocked by the massive central mound. Their voices drift over the water, laughing about how a target pays. Much better if they bring his severed head along with the proof. He does not make a sound. The hunters land on the southeast face, climbing the stone lip. Their crew charges straight across the first ring of stone coral mounds, ignoring the safe path. Because they are in a rush, they stomp over 3 mounds within 30 paces. The first stone mound holds, the second one supports their weight, but the third hides a nesting shield crab he never cleared from this deep zone. A heavy boot crashes down. The shield crab shifts, then gets crushed instantly. Across the southern shelf, 2 neighboring shield crabs in the tide pools react to the death because these creatures track each other through vibrations in their shells. The 2 crabs in the tide pools crawl straight out of the water. They lunge at the invaders. The 6-man line breaks as 2 turn to fight. Those 2 crabs stall the hunters just long enough for the rest of the colony to sense the kill and react. From his hiding spot, he counts the shield crabs the invaders strike down, 2 in the water, 1 crushed in another mound when a panicked hunter steps backward, 2 more in adjacent nests. They completely missed. The colony numbers are dropping much faster than he planned. Suddenly he hears the stone barnacle golem stir. It is not a loud awakening. Just a low, grinding scrape of ancient rock, moving for the first time in ages. The hardened reef shell layer covering the central mound begins to buckle and crack. Heavy stone fragments rain down on the southwest lip, just 2 meters away from The narrow tide crack he crawled out of, he remains perfectly still on the lip. The massive golem rises from the central mound with slow, lumbering momentum. Sluggish speed of a beast asleep for centuries, it stands taller than 3 whole men stacked high. The old report noted its weak point is the inner ankle of the left rear leg, where the barnacle plates never fully covered the reef stone. The hunters finally noticed the giant creature looming over them, freezing in terror. Now watch, they do what amateur hunters always do when waking a boss. Their coordination vanishes, breaking their 6-man team. He makes his move now, keeping the massive central mound between himself and the awakening stone monster. It is the only structure here larger than the beast. He unclips the vine rope from his belt, letting 2 arm lengths slide into his grip, then grabs his bone hook. The screaming hunters are retreating toward the southeast face, 2 of them already running. The golem slowly turns toward those runners, drawn to their loud, frantic splashing. He uses the noise to slip along the lip toward the giant weak ankle. He targets the left rear leg. The bone hook is baited with a massive piece of crab shell harvested from the southern shelf. It swings once, landing right inside the inner ankle joint. Vine rope tied to the rod's grip end unravels as the hook lands. He secures the other end around a stone coral mound right on the lip. Then he runs. The golem chases the fleeing hunters down the southeast face of the central mound. Its hooked inner ankle joint holds for just 1 step. Vine rope catches. Now a rope cannot stop a massive golem, but it is strong enough to redirect its step by a tiny fraction of a degree, catching the inner ankle of its left rear leg. When the joint catches that step, lands 6 inches inboard of where the beast planned. 6 inches inboard is the tide crack. The golem's left rear leg plunges straight into the tide crack. A tide crack is always narrow at the top and wider at the bottom. That is just how tide cracks work. Its leg slips in deep up to the inner knee, stone weight moving forward suddenly has nowhere to go as it crashes down. Talk about a brutal trap. The golem topples headfirst because its heavy skull was already leading the step. That deep crack swallows the monster up to its shoulders. The golem is not dead. Crack like this cannot drown a stone barnacle golem, but it is deep enough to trap its left rear leg in that bent, inner knee position. Pinned head down, the creature cannot swing its massive limbs at anything. He calmly walks past the trapped beast toward the southeast face. 2 remaining hunters stare at the fallen golem. Their cowardly crewmates are already at the shell. Rafts pushing off into the water. The 2 men left behind spot him. He offers them a silent, clear choice. They do not answer him. He warns them. Again, either push off after their crew or stay on the island with the golem. They just woke. The first hunter immediately pushes off to catch his crew. His partner hesitates for 2 more breaths before following. Those extra breaths are all he needs to size up the golem's inner ankle and realize that this is not a fight he wants without a 6-man team. Both rafts drift southeast on the surf. Now he stands alone on Shellback Bastion Island with the chests loot 6 shield crab plates, the trapped golem and the conquest interface suddenly opening deep within him. His control panel reads that the island is completely cleared. The trapped golem is helpless and cannot defend its core. The core of Shellback Bastion rests in the central mound right under the sleeping beast's old spot. His system reads it as unowned, vulnerable and ready to absorb. He taps the option, initiating the process. Resources inside the claim circle begin transferring, including 300 stone coral, 400 kilograms of moss, 18 squares of stone, 80 kilograms of Shellback Bastion's core dissolves into rich coral material to feed his Devour core. The Bastion blueprint sitting inside his inventory from the chest suddenly activates against the newly absorbed base. In the very next breath, the panel announces his coral base is upgraded to a refortress. The hum deep within him reacts in a brand new way, changing its deep pitch for the first time. Not louder but lower. Coral walls erupt along the seaward edge, 60 kilometers south-southwest of where he stands. The coral base panel tracks their rapid progress in real time as they surge upward. The seaward wall rises from 1 meter to 2, finally reaching its full 3-meter height. Right at the high tide line, 6 anchor spikes lock into the seabed along the path of his coral. This is exactly what the anchor spike recipe creates, activating against the island in the exact same way the blueprint did. Fortress moss spreads across the basin lid because it keeps his food from rotting. And the system panel knows that this lid is where the supplies are kept. His panel labels it a reef fortress, keeping it at fortress tier for now. While he awaits one final high-grade trade, he closes the panel, the golem. Pinned inside the crack is finally silent. Golems with pinned heads always quiet down. Eventually, out on the southeast horizon, Hunter's shell rafts look like tiny dots. He gathers the remaining resources inside his claim circle, like the shield crab plates and some fortress moss, the spear stone, and even the banded hardwood chest itself. He quickly rigs his bone sail frame on the southwest face because the structure is finally sturdy enough to handle the weight, residual energy from the coral wall. Bastion blueprint is left in the frame to serve as ballast, especially since his panel recognizes it as a structural reinforcement. That is exactly what a half-finished hull needs. He pushes off from the southwest face at hour 5 of his 6-hour window. The return crossing takes 2 hours because the bone sail frame is carrying 300 kilograms more than it was on the trip out, and the wind has shifted to the east-southeast, pulling him off course. He checks the chat panel as he sails. Lim DeHune still has not uploaded his second submission. The basalt flag remains missing, and that massive bounty is still pinned at the top. However, a second pinned post appeared right under the bounty while he was on Shellback Bastion. This new post comes from a market lieutenant, not Silken himself, and the message displays the slave dock fleet's revised route map at the bottom in a small, glowing font. The fleet's new arrival time at his coral reads as just 1 tide cycle, or 20 minutes. His return trip won't deliver him within that short window. Instead, he will arrive 2 hours after they land. 2 hours is plenty. His coral island rises from the surf right at the second hour mark. The seaward walls stand 3 meters tall, exactly where the panel predicted. Anchor spikes driven into the seabed below the seaward edge are catching the surf the way spikes always do, simply by staying in place. The basin lid is now a vibrant fortress moss green. The bone tooth line, mangrove root snares, and iron palm posts remain exactly where he left them. Soy sits on the seaward wall,